rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We have two proclamations tonight for students. Mr. Ware, would you assist me, please? Yes. Dr. Bond, I think, is going to also assist me.
I'll read through this position tonight. It's always a pleasure to assist the board president and represent the board in acknowledging the outstanding achievements of our students. Those of you who attend our meetings regularly or who watch our meetings regularly know that we invite outstanding scholars, our outstanding students, athletes, come to the board and receive recognition for their unusual accomplishments. The proclamation that the board uses on such occasions has, I would call it, generic language at the beginning, and then is customized for each of the student recipients. We have two outstanding recipients tonight, which we will invite to come forward shortly. I'll read the proclamation just once. Whereas many North Penn School District students individually and collectively perform distinguished service to their school in many activities, and whereas the reputation and image of the North Penn School District is built and enhanced by the performance of its faculty and students, and whereas the accomplishments of individual students in academic, artistic, athletic, leadership, literary, and musical endeavors bring positive community interest in school programs, and whereas the future of any community rests in the hands of its responsible youth, and then the student is named and the accomplishment is explained. I think tonight, with the permission of the board president and Dr. Bond, who will introduce our students in a moment, I would like to ask that we also acknowledge the participation of parents in the support of their students. And I'm wondering if the students who are going to be asked to come forward by Dr. Bond would not please bring their parents with them all the way, or at least halfway, to share in the celebration of this accomplishment. Would you consider that, please?
Bring them up.
Dr. Bond, will you introduce the students, please?
With privilege. The first recipient is Amy Sin. Amy. Amy made me promise not to embarrass her too much. Amy is the first prize winner in Poetry Division of the National Foundation for the Advancement of Arts. She wrote an incredible poem that many of you had the privilege of reading. And you don't have to duck, you're the star here. It's on because of you. And we're excited. Amy, you want to recite the poem?
I didn't bring it.
You didn't bring it. I know it. You want me to recite it? I probably couldn't do it justice. Amy is an avid writer. Amy came to the high school not quite sure what it is she wanted to do. She and I guess Dr. Walsh got together and decided that Amy would be a poet. And we're at least $3,000. $3,000 for writing a poem. So you got $3,000 for writing a poem. I can recite it. Roses are red, violets are blue, and as long as I'm your principal, I will love you.
But it's not worth $3,000. Can we acknowledge your father? Is your father with? He's behind the camera.
And I have been a high school principal in two different places for a total of 17 years. In 17 years, I've had two students, one in a former principalship and one here, that has received a perfect score on the SATs. The perfect score is 1,600. Now, some of you, that's no big deal because you had perfect scores on your SAT. But to these reporters sitting in the front row, that's a big deal. I'd like to invite Junior Young Choi up. to acknowledge the fact that he is one of very, very few people in the world to get a perfect score on the SATs. Jimmy?
I want to share something with you. Very few people know this, but I also had. Truly. It only took me 3 total times. I understand he's not even going to take them next year for some reason. No need to. That's quite an achievement.
Jim's parents are here.
Can we have your parents' name?
June had received a 1600 on the college boards. It reminded me so much of myself that I wanted to meet someone who was so much like me face to face. So I called into my office and I said, June, tell me, how is it that you managed to score 1600 on the college board? He said, Dr. Bond, I took the test. Congratulations, buddy, and good luck to you.
Both these.
Yeah.
We'll take a 5-minute quick recess so the other members of the board can congratulate the students, and then we'll reconvene here very quickly. Put this over here. Okay, we're going to start back up again. Reconvene. I purposely did not read the statement that appears on the front of your packet tonight before the proclamation so that everyone would have a chance to get in and get settled. We're changing the procedures tonight, and we will continue to use these procedures as we see, as we get a chance to view them and see how they work. So please listen up, because they're not printed. Here's the way we will run the audience of citizens. After the committee reports, we will have an audience of citizens that you will be allowed to ask questions or speak on topics which will be voted on later in the meeting. So if it's not printed that we're planning to vote on a particular issue and you want to ask or state your opinion about something else in the district, there will be another time for you to do that. And that time will be after the business is conducted at the end of the meeting, where you may stand, come to the podium, and speak about any issue not on the agenda. In all cases, each individual will be allowed to come up and speak for 3 minutes. Please keep your comments to 3 minutes or less. State your name. For those of you who have not been here before, name and from where you're from. After I recognize you and you come to the front. Here again, the first audience of citizens will only be to ask questions on things specifically we're voting on. The second will be to address any issues. Please be succinct. You get one chance. You may come up once during the first session, once during the second session. So get in your comments. You don't need to lobby us. Just tell us where you stand. We appreciate your opinion. At that point, we will continue. Please note that you should keep your comments generic. Don't lambast or try to polarize the board any more than we already are by pointing fingers and calling names about specific people on the board. I don't think it's appropriate, because each individual member of the board may share other people's opinions. We may not agree with you, but it's our opinion and your opinion. So please keep it to that. Please keep it on a generic level. With that, we'll proceed on then with the committee reports. First one is facilities. Mr. Allen.
Yes, Mr. President, on tonight's agenda, you'll see we're going to be asking to go out for bids to do a traffic study at the entrance of the high school on Valley Forge Road, with the intent of seeing if we can put up a flashing 15-mile-an-hour sign. An obvious safety concern if you've ever been in front of that building at start time or finish time for the high school. And also, the board should be aware that we will soon be asked to go out for bids on asbestos abatement in Penndale. End of report.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Allen. Any questions of Bill? Okay. Community Services and Policy, Carmen's not here. Our alternate is Bill. Any
No report.
Okay, thank you. Elementary Ed, Mr. Clements.
Mr. President, I'd like to report that later on this evening, I'd like to draw your attention to three particular items. The one item would be the recommend approval of the attendance area realignment as set forth on the map, which is included with the packet tonight. The second item I'd like to call attention to is the approval of Dr. Albert Erb as interim elementary principal at Montgomery. And then finally, permanent a recommendation for principal for Montgomery of Mr. Michael Wilson. Those are the three items I have to bring up.
Great, thanks. Anything else?
That's it.
Any questions of Tom? Okay, secondary ed, Mr. Redcap. Your report, okay, thanks. Special ed, Mrs. Perkowski. Oh,
No
there you are.
report.
You're hiding from me over there between those little guys. Support services, Mrs. Mangle.
No report under support services, but I do under municipal relations, if you would remember that under other assignments.
Okay. Let's see, who's next? Finance, Mrs. Shear.
Yes, first I'd like to announce the proposed calendar for our budget hearings beginning on April 11th, 1995. Budget meeting will begin at 7:30 p.m. on Thursday, April 20th, 8 p.m. in conjunction with a regularly scheduled school board meeting. Thursday, April 27th, 7:30 p.m. We'll deal with facility support operations and school and community services. Tuesday, May 2nd, 7:30 p.m., elementary education, secondary ed, and student services will be discussed. Wednesday, May 3rd, 7:30 p.m., personnel items. Tuesday, May 9th, 7:30 p.m., in conjunction with a regularly scheduled school board committee meeting. Thursday, May 18th at 8 p.m., again in conjunction with the regularly scheduled school board meeting. Tuesday, June 6th, 7:30 p.m., in conjunction with a regularly scheduled school board committee meeting. And Thursday, June 15th, we hope to conclude and adopt a final budget. I'd like to say on the first meeting, April 11th, that will be basically a budget overview and introduction, and then we will have a lapse of time for everyone to be able to digest the budget, for the community to also review the budget, and we hope to have in place a user-friendly budget for our community this year. Thank you. And then I'd also like to announce that on the agenda tonight, we will be voting on the approval of two resolutions that will amend the 1990 and 1992A bond series. The purpose of the amended resolutions is the payback of a $25 million note to the Emmaus Bond Pool Program that is due February 28, 1995. This note was first approved by the board in October of 1993. In order to explain this transaction in more detail, I'd like to introduce Mr. Glenn Willard of Public Financial Management and Mr. Richard Wood of Rhodes and Simon, our bond counsel. Both will give a short introduction and presentation to the board to explain the transaction that's about to take place.
Willard.
Good evening. It's nice to be back. It was about a year or so ago that our firm was last here with bond counsel to talk about the Emmaus Authority. I put together just a brief handout that has a green cover page that's before you. Briefly, when we were here to implement the plan of finance with the borrowing from the Emmaus Authority, we presented to the board that transaction would produce a benefit of about $210,000. It was approved unanimously by the board at the time. And on a preliminary basis, I'd be happy to report that the benefits of that transaction are in excess of $300,000. And it would be our hope that we would come back at a later time to meet with the board to talk about the financing options and strategies going forward, as well as the final accounting of the exact benefits. But suffice it to say for this evening that it would appear that we're at least $100,000 or so above the benefit that the board expected to receive back in the fall of '93 or early 1994. That plan of finance did anticipate either a bond issue in early 1995 to retire the Emmaus note or a application of existing funds to retire the Emmaus note. So that what we're here for this evening then, since the board is not in a position to issue 1995 refunding bonds, that the retirement of the Emmaus note, according to schedule and on plan, would be to use the remaining 1990 proceeds and the unspent 1992A proceeds to retire that Emmaus note. The Emmaus note, as presented at the time, was for $25 million of a note through the general authority and what's called a letter of credit facility of about $25.5 million to a letter of credit bank in New York City. Both of those were incurred simultaneously in a year or so ago. Upon retirement of the note, both of those are removed from the debt statement so that at the close of business on March 1st, if things go according to plan, both of those would be removed from the debt statement and no longer exist. The resolution that you have before you, or you'll be considering later on, we have met with your solicitor, bond counsel, superintendent, and business manager, and have discussed with the finance person liaison. Again, if we flip to the first page, I'd be happy to just summarize briefly what is currently in the construction funds, the 3 different construction funds as of today, and what would be there next week at this time if you adopt the resolutions. There are 3 different construction funds. The Emmaus account on the top left-hand corner that contains about, these are round numbers, about $8.5 million out of the original 25. There is about $2.5 million of 1990 bond proceeds that are remaining, and there are about $27.1 million from the 1992A proceeds. That total, in round numbers, is $38 million. That's what's in your construction funds today. It takes $25 million plus the interest payment for the month of February to retire the Emmaus note. That interest payment's about $85,000. So that you see the plan was always to use the remaining unspent Emmaus proceeds first. That's the $8.5 million in the top left. Since there's no refunding bond proceeds contemplated, it would be our recommendation to use and retire the 1990 bond fund for several reasons, state reasons as well as federal reasons, to retire that account. And then the balance that's needed to retire the Emmaus note comes from the top right-hand corner, the 92A bond proceeds. After spending about $14 million out of the 92A bond proceeds account, there should still be, in the very right-hand corner, a little over $13 million left next week for you to complete the renovations to the middle school and to start renovations at the junior high school when those bids come in. Now, depending on when those, or at what level those bids come in at, you may or may not need a future bond issue to complete the junior high school project. But as of the close of business on March 1st, assuming the Emmaus note is retired, then there'd be $13 million left in your construction fund. Okay, that is a brief summary. Again, it would be our intentions to come back at a later meeting to discuss, other financing options as well as a more detailed summary of the Emmaus note. But in 5 minutes or less, that's what you have before you this evening.
Any questions of Mr. Williard?
Yes. I want to see if I'm summing this up correctly in simple terms that I can understand. I remember back a year plus ago when we put the money in the Emmaus bond fund because it was we were going to earn more interest on it or pay less back. Is that correct?
Well, the total plan was to produce an extra benefit in excess of $200,000 through a combination of things that you're describing.
Okay. And we did that, correct?
You're going to earn above $200,000, yes.
Okay. After fees and expenses?
Net of all expenses, yes.
Okay. So now it's time to pay the piper where we take that money that we put into that fund and, so to speak, get rid of it, pay it off, and be done with it. It's no longer an obligation. We're getting rid of the bonds. We're no longer paying any interest on them, correct?
On the Emmaus General Authority bond, correct.
On the 25 million,
Right.
plus or minus. So when we're done with this on March 1st, the only bonds that we will have outstanding is approximately 13 million?
No, that's all the
No.
money we have left.
No, this chart is what, it only focuses on what is in your construction funds.
That's all the cash.
Does not, I mean, you still have your other bond issues outstanding, and you're still making payments on those.
Okay.
But what this is intended to show you is that you will have $13 million in your construction fund to finish, as I understand it, the renovations at the middle school, which are only, I'll say, $1.5 million or $2 million. And then that would leave you, the difference would be available then for your junior high school project.
Okay. But there are still other bonds.
Well, there's no other construction funds. There's other bond issues on the books of the school district that you're making payments for.
Older ones.
Older bond issues, correct.
Okay.
But this is all you'd have available to build new projects with.
Okay.
All the other money's been spent.
After the 25 million is paid off, that will bring our debt down to $74 million.
Okay.
Currently, it's 99. With the 25 gone, it'll bring it down to 74.
Okay.
But I would like to interject also, the 13 million that's left in the bond funds, that's the liquid fund balance, but I want the board to remember there's still $6.2 million of land purchase that's owed back at some future point to finish the renovations.
Okay, any other questions?
Yes, Mr. Willard, I appreciate the time that you spent with me on the phone, and in clarifying the net profit per se for the school district through this transaction. I looked over the proposal that you gave regarding the difference between the borrowing rate and the investment rate, and I saw that you show that a 0.85%. Is that what your final, because these were weekly bonds, were they not? So they were adjusted on a weekly basis, and it was at risk as to whatever the market was at that given time. And that's what you evaluated the overall average was, or the annual?
Yes, those were the numbers I showed you the other day were the averages through some point of a couple of weeks ago, yeah.
Okay. At that time, we requested, Dennis particularly requested a breakdown of the pay in and pay out schedule there to show that profit.
Yeah, I think it may not have gotten here till late this afternoon.
Yeah, it was faxed down about 4:30 this afternoon, Mr. Shar. I didn't really get a chance to evaluate it yet.
Well, could you tell me, was the 1.5% administration fee that's paid to the Pliget included in your analysis? Paid to Pliget included?
Yeah, all of the expenses were included in the information that we shared with you. Yes, it's all net of expenses. There's
Okay, because I saw a plus 0.85, and yet if you take a 1.5% administration fee, you've got a negative balance there in percentage.
Yeah, no,
of 0.65.
all the administration fees were taken out. There's actually it's 54 basis points of administration fees, including the letter credit banks, Emmaus, Pliget, trustee fees, remarketing agent fees, but they're all netted out in all the information. We've always shown the board, our history has always been to show you things net of expenses.
Okay. One other question that was asked, and I tried to get it from Dennis, it's a little hard to understand. In previous bond issues, we listed programs such as the alterations and additions to Pembroke and Pembroke. That was a part of our 1990 bond issue. It was for $27.7 million. Now, in this Emmaus bond issue, which took place through the previous board, it's again listed as the project use. And as are some of the other projects that are listed here for the use of the proceeds to, I guess, justify the borrowing. I don't understand how are we able to relist the same projects in various bond issues, particularly if they have not been specifically refunded or retired?
Well, I think in the sequence that you're talking about, where we identified those two projects for the Emmaus borrowing, sort of along with that, you have now amended the other resolutions to be available for future projects. In other words, to actually borrow from Emmaus, we had to justify that we had additional projects into the future while not saying it's built, it's adding, or it's a new building. We said that there were additional projects in the future that those other bond proceeds would be needed for. Because we're not permitted to borrow, I'll make up a number, 40 million of bonds to do 20 million of projects. So we had to identify that we had sufficient projects on out through 1995 for all of the bond programs, but we were able to redirect which construction funds would be spent first. And that's really what we've done. We as you're pointing out, the two Penfield and the other project would now be spent first out of the Emmaus programs, and then the earlier 90 and 92 bonds would be available for projects in 95 and beyond.
Right, but at the time that we went to borrow this, we did have the existing funds
Yes.
through the stated bond issue that was taken out
Yes.
many years ago. And, okay, I guess one other question of confusion. Was the bond written in such a way that it didn't require board authorization for the expenditure of funds?
No, the board would need to approve all of the construction expenditures that come out of the bond construction account.
But out of this particular bond issue?
You know, I assume you approve them at your meetings. I mean, it's a normal it's just the same as your 90 construction fund or your 92 construction fund.
Right.
I mean, it has no special treatment in that sense. I mean, you would approve expenditures out of the Emmaus construction fund the same as you would any of your other construction funds.
Yeah, Mr.
Dennis,
Chair,
how would this be listed? We
It's
get our
listed-
bond check registers. I've never approved a 1994 bond issue expenditure or an Emmaus account expenditure in the whole year I've been on this board.
Right, all the bond expenditures are listed on the check register. It was just a matter of which account they were coming from, the Pliget account through the Emmaus loan, rather than from the actual bond fund loan that was invested.
Right. But I've never approved for any of those. There's never been a check register disbursement from any of these accounts.
It's listed on there as bond fund. I think I explained to you, it might say the 1990 bond fund at the top, but what's on that check register are all the expenses that come out of the bond fund accounts for no matter which bond.
So no matter what it says at the top, we're dispersing from various bonds at the same time through the same approval? Is that?
Yes, they're listed as being out of the bond fund account.
The plan of finance that was put together contemplated spending the Emmaus proceeds first and retaining the 92As and the 90s until the end. That was the plan of finance that was put together when we were here last. So probably if you check back, if you have time to check back, you'll find that the money, well, we started with 25 in Emmaus, and according to the chart, we're down to $8.5 million. So we spent whatever that is, $17 million in the last 14 months has all been spent out of the Emmaus construction fund.
Right. I guess the problem is there's such a maze, and as I've said to both yourself and Dennis, it becomes really confusing. We take out a bond issue in January of this year. We place $10 million into the 1992 bond series. Now we're going through another transaction to remove 13-point-some million from that very account that we took out a bond to refund $10 million just 1 year ago. And so when you try to follow the patterns of the dollars, you have a crisscrossing here, some money going up, and next thing you know, money's coming down, and then it's crossing over. I really would appreciate, as I asked a year ago, for an inter-district meeting and then perhaps another broader report to the public at large, an update of all of our accounts. I understand that what we're faced with tonight, we do need to support because the bond does have to be paid back. Is that not correct? We are in a position that if we don't, we would renege.
Yeah, the plan has always been to retire the note on March the 1st, and yes, it would be our hope that at a subsequent meeting we could show you more details on how all this worked to refresh and to educate all the board.
Okay.
Any other questions?
Dick, I have a few questions. Mr. Lord, I understand from answers that you had given to Mrs. Scher that this was invested in a Pliget account, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Did you recommend investing in the Pliget account? Was that your recommendation to do that?
Yes.
Okay, and does your firm or any of its affiliates receive any investment management fees for monies invested in the Pliget account?
Yes, our firm is the investment advisor for the Pliget programs, including the Pliget account that this money was invested in.
So not only did you receive fees for your services rendered, but there were also fees again when you recommended a Pliget account, which is out of your firm anyway.
For the investment advisory service, is that correct?
Okay, one of the board members at the last meeting had referred to this exchange or this financing package as quote-unquote legal arbitrage. I always thought legal arbitrage was an oxymoron, and I guess I'd like to know from you if that is the correct term, or was that a way to refer to this financing package in the Emmaus Bond Fund?
Well, I think where that connotation may come from is that when we were here and discussed the pros and cons and features and benefits of the program, this is a program that is grandfathered under the 1986 Tax Reform Act. A borrowing from the Emmaus Authority has benefits that the school district could not achieve on their own because the program is grandfathered. And one of the features is the ability to earn and keep arbitrage earnings on the Emmaus account. So someone may refer to it as legal arbitrage. I think those were the words you used. Because of its benefits, you are permitted to keep arbitrage earnings on the Emmaus proceeds.
Because of the grandfathering.
Yes.
But for that to be an actual practice, that is not a legal practice.
Well, there are limits. I mean, the district is permitted to borrow funds and earn an arbitrage in today's environment up to certain limits, up to $5 million in a calendar year. So this district or any other district in Pennsylvania or elsewhere can do that up to $5 million, and that's perfectly legal. Okay. Above $5 million, while there are certain exceptions, generally speaking, you're not permitted to keep arbitrage on any borrowings over $5 million in a calendar year.
Okay. Art, as I look at what is left for you to do with the middle schools and the junior high, could you just give me a quick, or Dennis, could you give me a quick overview of what future borrowings we are going to need? Aside from this $13 million here for these projects, you're talking new roof, you're talking a second high school, you're talking about a reimbursement of the $6.2 on land already purchased by a former board?
Yes.
Okay, so what are we looking at as, you know, we're down, our debt is now down to 75?
About 74,
About $75 million. Shortly, I'm assuming, we're going to be taking it back up again. I'd like to know tonight an anticipated amount of dollars that we're going to increase.
Well, depending on the board's wishes on the expansion of the secondary school, it could be anywhere from $30 to $45 million.
Okay.
Mr. Wood can probably update you on potential dollars on other projects, say the current high school roof and some other.
Okay, and then the roof would be approximately, Art?
Well, the total project, number of projects that we anticipate, including the roof, is about $4.5 million.
Another $4.5 million, and then a $6.2 million to reimburse us.
Well, that 6.2, Mr. Mengel, will be included in with the 30 to 45 million for the secondary expansion.
Okay, so it's anticipated that the second high school is going to cost between $35 and $40 million.
Between 30 and 45 million.
30. Okay, so it'll be back up again. Mr. Willard, on 3 occasions I'm positive of. I have asked for breakdown of fees, miscellaneous fees, legal fees, your fees, Dick Wood's fees, any fees that Mr. Potash had received. All monies that all people have received on our borrowing. And I'm going to ask for it again tonight. And I'm going to go home tonight when the meeting's finally over, and I'm going to put that in writing there. And so as soon as possible, I would like that accounting sent to me. And I will send you legal notice of my desire for that document.
Yeah, that's always been available.
I have never received it, and I've asked that from you in public meetings.
Donna, on this statement, it was $20,000 each. Bond counsel, district solicitor, and financial advisor. As far as our end of the responsibility, I don't know from whether, I assume PFM received the 1.5% administrative fee, yes or no? Yes? Went to PFM, the 1.5% administrative fee that was on the $25 million that went from the Emmaus to the Pliget?
No, that was, I'm sorry, Mr. Chair, that went to Pliget.
To
That was-
Pliget. I don't know if there's a commission or not on that, and I don't know the other end of the process beyond
Pliget
here, the
belongs to
initial
them.
issuance.
Okay, as we anticipate other borrowing, I'd like to place on the record, Mr. Bowman and Solicitor, that as we approach the need for new money for projects ahead, that I'm going to wish that this is put up for bid. And that's the end of my questions.
Okay. Any other questions of Mr. Legg?
I have one, but I'm a little concerned that with public financial management, as you answered Mrs. Mangle, you are the advisor for the Pliget that we took the money from the Emmaus into that account. But you also act as the program, and your company does, I mean, not yourself perhaps personally. Maybe you do, maybe you don't. As the program administrator for the bond pool program with the stated responsibility of promoting the bond pool program to local government agencies. And then it follows through with the Pliget, and as the advisor also to the authority that oversees the bond pool program. And I don't know, my husband's an attorney, and you really can't have the same law firm representing all sides of the table in court cases, and it seems a little bit hard to understand how you can wear so many different hats and still be objective on all sides of the process.
Well, we certainly disclosed all of what you're describing when we were here before. I mean, it's not that we didn't tell you about it.
I don't know.
We make no secret of the fact that we're the program administrator for the Pliget Bond Pool. We're quite proud of that fact. It's the only, there's 3 programs in the state who are grandfathered the way I've described it, and they all have funds at different points in time. And as I recall, at that time, there was no other funds available from the other 2 bond pool programs, so that this was the only bond pool program available. I mean, there wasn't that you could go out for bids and get other bids for such a program. It was the only one there for you.
I mean, we wouldn't have qualified if it weren't for the existence of this government.
No, there was no other
endorsed
programs who had funds available with these benefits.
So
I mean, it was the only program for you.
is this government funds to begin with? In other words, the $375 million that was originally invested, is that government dollars?
Well, they're
that
tax
initiated
exempt.
the bond pool program?
They're tax-exempt bonds that are funded by a firm who sells those bonds to the public. So investors invest in the Emmaus General Authority bonds, and then those are the proceeds that are lent to the North Penn School District.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay. Just to recap, basically, we made on this, after the whole interest is paid, we make $115,000 plus by doing this over that period of time, plus had use of the money. Is that correct about?
Well, you made over $300,000.
Okay, $300,000. My math was not good. The fact that we've
Net of all the
paying back-
expenses.
Net of all the expenses, that regardless of how many people that you manage what accounts for, the school district netted, because the board took action to do this, over $300,000.
That's right.
Great. Thank you, Glenn, for coming tonight to tell us that. Dick, do you have a presentation also?
Good evening. You have 2 resolutions before you. I believe they speak for themselves. The purpose is to amend the purposes of both the 90 and 92 borrowing resolutions as permitted by state law to incorporate the ability to repay the Emmaus note. The Local Government Unit Debt Act permits such an amendment. As long as it's adopted in accordance with law. That law requires that you advertise a notice of your intention to amend the purpose, which appeared, I believe, in Monday's newspaper. And upon adoption by the board this evening, if it so chooses, we will then complete the advertising requirement and submit the filing with the Department of Community Affairs. But again, the resolutions amend the purpose and authorize the payment to incorporate and facilitate the repayment of the note.
Okay, Mr. Wood, any questions on the specific resolutions that we have before us tonight? Okay, thank you, gentlemen, for coming tonight to do that. Anything else under finance, Mr. Sheriff?
No, that's it. That's the report.
Personnel, Mr. Weiss.
No report.
Legislative Carmen's not here. I have a couple items from her. The House and the Senate have both are working on bills that address the issue of weapons possession in the schools, which directly affects us. The House and the Senate within Pennsylvania differ on what those bills should be, so I guess it'll ultimately go to committee if and when the Senate bill passes. But it has to do with immediate expulsion, placed in alternative education schools and programs. So we'll keep an eye on those bills, as well as, and this will help the teachers that may be here. There's the House Bill 837, which establishes a uniform employment application for those professionals seeking teaching certificates. So that means if you come to this district, you don't have to fill out an application and go to Solderton and fill out a different application. Hopefully you have one and it's applicable throughout the state. Also, there's an amendment that's being recommended to the Constitution that provides a tax credit for education expenses incurred by parents or guardians for dependents attending nonprofit elementary and secondary schools. We're trying to figure out what that all meant, but it appears that that hopefully if you have to go to an alternate ed school and pay money out of pocket, it happens in very limited cases, but nonetheless we'll still be able to get a tax credit for that. And also, while it doesn't apply to us, there's also a bill that applies public assistance, which means our tax dollars that we pay in the states will go to school districts that are judged to be academically distressed, whatever our legislators have to say about that. Whatever academically distressed is, they haven't yet put some kind of valuation on what that means. So those are the bills that are in work from the legislative group. Any questions of that? Okay. Next is the Montgomery County Intermediate Unit. Last night at the meeting, the MCIU board approved the proposed 95-96 general operating budget, which includes 4 budgets. The first is the general administration service budget, which we do not contribute to. That comes strictly from state funds. And then 3 that we participate in supporting and receive services from. The curriculum and staff development budget, the state and federal legislative services budget, and the instructional materials services budget. The IMS is the one that we participate largely in, and in fact gain within the district a lot of value from in terms of instructional materials from the IU. The overall budget that we approved is an increase of 1.97% for the year. I think our contribution to the whole budget is about I think $204,000, which is up from I think 200 or 196 or something like that. So. No, it's not up from 196. It's up $4,000. So it was at 200,000 last year. That was the main things that came out of the IU meeting last night. Any questions of that? About that? Okay. Next item, North Monco, Ralph.
Yes, there's 4 items. Wanted to make a report. The youth apprenticeship program that was started last year with 4 students. Now that 22 students in it this year, and for next year there are over 50 that are currently applied. They're expecting more than 50 youth apprenticeship students. In addition, we've authorized the administration to establish an exchange program with German youth apprenticeships. And Dr. Percy is closely involved with this. What's the name of the organization it works through? Is the
German-American Partnership.
And the youth apprenticeship program and youth apprenticeships in Germany has been well established and is some of the model for the Pennsylvania Youth Apprenticeship Program. and we're going to be establishing an exchange program of up to 15 students a year. Our students will go over there, their students will come here, and they'll actually work in facilities at those locations. Very exciting program. The other item, the adult program, there was a report on adult program this year. If you remember, I reported some weeks ago that because of the volume of people in the school this year, we've limited to some extent the adult program during the day. There used to be a lot more adults during the day. We've had to limit it because of the number of students in there. They developed some what they call prime time programs to bring people in, adults in the late afternoon as well as the evening. And I think people saw the recent article about the driver ed program that's been started there. The bottom line of all this is last year we had 281 adults. This year we're dealing with 500 adults at the VOTEC, another success. We also introduced to the VOTEC board last night our proposed budget for next year. We'll be voting on it back next month and then bringing it to our whole boards after that. The budget reflects an increase of students, projected increase of students from 731 to 861. The cost per student will go down. It went down $1,000 per student this year. It's going to go down another $276 per student. And the budget itself is a 10.4% increase in local contributions. I think it's well worth it at the VOTEC. Nice things happen there. End of report.
Thank you, Ralph. Any questions of Mr. Reckamp? Okay, next item, Merck Science Partnership. Mr. Weitz.
No report.
Community Relations Meeting. Mrs. Meng.
Yes, Mr. Bowman, this past month, you can't hear me? I'm sorry, through too. This past month, we had a municipal relations meeting where all elected officials from all 7 municipalities comprising the district and all elected officials on this board were invited to come out and hear a very fine lecture and presentation on reassessment. It was provided to us by the esteemed Gil High, and a local attorney, and also our very own solicitor, Charles Potash. Also, Interim Superintendent Persing was there, and it was a good opportunity for all of those in elected office to be on the same page at the same time on reassessment. And not only do we now understand all the ramifications of what is causing some of our reassessment problems, we also had legislators in the audience that were charged with looking and seeking a legislative remedy for what we're all experiencing, not only here at the school district, but also in the municipalities. So we are hoping that legislators Gottschall, Gladdick, Bunt, and Fichter, who are in attendance that night, will now move forward and attempt to rectify and plug the reassessment problem that we are having. Plug in terms of the fact that each municipality, and North Penn in particular, is hemorrhaging from reassessments. Though people see growth around us increasing and therefore anticipate that there must be plenty of money here because everyone's moving in, what they don't realize is out the bottom, we are hemorrhaging from reassessment. So it was a very good meeting, and I thank, again, Solicitor Potash for his fine presentation and all those in attendance. And we'll see what our legislators are going to do. Thank you, Mr. Bowman.
Thank you, Donna. Any questions of Mrs. Mingle?
I don't have a question, but I do have a compliment. That was Mrs. Mengel who, in fact, set up the meeting. It was her initiative. But one of the points she made that I think this audience should know and the entire community should know, that our best estimate is that we will lose $1,600,000 in assessment taxes in 95-96. And we have had only about a 0.8% growth in this school district, which has usually typified about 3 to 7% growth, if I understand that correctly, over the last several years. So I need to tell you that the property tax, as it stands now, is a limited source of income for this school district.
Thank you, Doctor.
Thanks, Dr. Persing. Any other questions of Donna? Okay, great. The next item is a an assignment that we gave to Mr. Potash, our solicitor, based on a question that happened at our regular committee meeting last Tuesday, and that was whether a referendum could be put on the ballot regarding the options that we have for a new high school or a modified high school or some other solution to take care of our high school population down the road. So at this time, I'd ask Mr. Potash to enlighten us with what he's found through his research.
Yeah, following the meeting last Tuesday night, the superintendent of schools called me and asked me to be prepared following the discussion that took place at that meeting on certain issues. He said, Charles, I want you to be prepared for the agenda item on this Thursday night, tonight's meeting, to address the legality of having an advisory referendum placed on a ballot. He says, I want you to be prepared to address how an advisory referendum or a binding referendum affects Act 34. Does it take the place of an Act 34 hearing? And be prepared to address that issue. I think that issue was raised by Mrs. Sheriff. Says, I want you to be prepared with a petition. Should the board vote for an advisory referendum, you be prepared with a petition, and you frame the question. There were some discussions at that meeting whether or not there would be a time to frame the question because there were certain time limitations that the board had to meet. And this was his assignment to me. He says, I don't know how the board is going to proceed, but you be prepared to address all these items. Well, I took the superintendent very seriously, and as I always do. And
Which is a good idea.
So, on the first issue, heretofore, the issue of advisory referendums was something that had been bandied about in the state of Pennsylvania. There was a case, the Hemphill case, which we originally talked about back in 1991. I think the first time the referendum was ever presented for discussion was in 1990. But in 1990, there was a case, the Hempfield case, which sort of indicated that while taxpayers or a group of people other than the governing board had no right to request a question be placed on a ballot, there was some dicta which would lead you to believe that the governing board of the school district petitioned the court and asked for an advisory referendum, with the caveat, of course, that this was up to the discretion of the election board whether or not such a referendum question could be placed. That is an advisory, non-binding referendum. The Department of Community Affairs handed out a handbook, a referendum handbook, which said specifically that. And it specifically says that that was discretionary with the local election boards. However, since that time, the Department of Community Affairs has taken a different position based on a Schuylkill County Board of Elections case, and that was a Blight versus the Schuylkill County Board of Elections, which held that advisory questions are illegal in Pennsylvania, and that the County Board of Election is without power to place non-binding advisory questions on a ballot. And this they published as their most recent handbook that came out in the latter part of '94. So, I researched that case, and I've come to the conclusion and issued an opinion to the Board of School Directors that while the decision in Hempfield was not specifically overruled, it is my opinion that it is unlikely that the Board of Elections would place a non-binding referendum question on the ballot, particularly in view of the position of the Department of Community Affairs and their handbook, which is apparently what the boards of elections follow, and particularly in view of the decision in the Blythe case. I rendered this decision as I was requested to do by the superintendent, and he has that opinion. I believe I circulated to the rest of the board copies of that opinion this evening. Well, by the same token, I was asked to be prepared to discuss whether or not we could ask for a binding referendum. Now, we cannot ask for binding referendum because there's no statutory authority to do so except under the School Code 701.1, which is specifically addresses an issue where the maximum building construction costs exceed the standards determined by the Department of Education. And under those circumstances, a school district cannot proceed to construct without voter approval. And we are not at that phase yet. It is not time to even address that issue because we don't know what the maximum building construction costs are going to be. I was asked about an Act 34 hearing. What is an Act 34 hearing? If we requested a binding referendum, would that take the place of an Act 34 hearing? It does not. An Act 34 hearing is specifically provided for by statute. The Act 34 hearing takes place when certain circumstances exist, and the binding referendum under 701.1 is also determined upon certain conditions existing. So at this time, it would be premature to even request a binding referendum under any case. Certainly, there's no statutory authority to do so. I was also told, well, irrespective of that, Charles, you better be prepared to frame the question. I don't know what the board's going to do, but you better be prepared to frame the question and prepare a petition. So, as the superintendent said, it makes good sense to follow the instructions of the superintendent. So I did prepare the petition. I did frame the question. And the following question which I framed for submission, simple as could be, yes or no. That's the only type of question that a county board of elections would accept if they had the authority to accept it or they believe they have the authority to accept. And the question framed is as follows. Should North Penn School District build a second high school for 1,200 students in grades 10 through 12 instead of expanding the existing high school? Yes or no? And that was the type of question that I framed working with the administration that would put the exact issue before the electorate. And I understand that is basically the issue. I think it was the superintendent, or it was going to be the superintendent's recommendation, at least for purposes of discussion regarding this petition, that we address a high school, am I correct, Dr. Persing, of 10 through 12, for 1,200 students, or expanding the existing high school. And that was the issue. And I had to work with something, so that's what I worked with. Prepared the petition, and it is my understanding that this would be addressed at tonight's meeting. However, I must again inform you that I do not believe that the Board of Elections will place an advisory question on the ballot. And in fact, I advised the board back, I believe, in 1993, on January 11th, that in my discussions with the county board, election board, with Mr. Michael McAdoo, that it was unlikely that a request for, he stated, that requests for non-binding referendums are being discouraged. And he further stated it was unlikely that a request for a non-binding referendum would be approved by the board solicitor. And that discussion took place with a member of my firm, with Mr. McAdoo. And I advised the board of that. I don't see circumstances changing. However, I believe the position of the Department of Community Affairs now answers that question. And they rely, of course, on the Blythe versus Schuylkill County Election Board case. I've read that case, and I believe that is a position that the County Board of Elections can rely on.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Potash. Any questions of Charles?
Yes, President Bowman, I do have questions. Charles, what is the date of that case?
1991.
Oh, the Schuylkill County case?
Yep.
We've had several legal opinions since then that
You never had a legal opinion?
Mrs. Chair,
I'm sorry.
Mrs. Mingle, finish, please.
No, that's okay, Mr. Chair. Charles, okay, that was a 1991 case.
Yeah.
We have had opinions from you since that time. I know that I have been in receipt of them, and this is the first I've heard of this case. Also, did this case go to the Supreme Court of Pennsylvania?
No, Commonwealth Court.
What? Okay.
That is an appellate court.
Right. Is it under appeal?
I believe they may have attempted an appeal, but it has not, the Supreme Court has not accepted an appeal in that case.
Do you know that for a fact?
I know that as a fact.
Does this ruling on the Commonwealth Court level overturn the statutes in 701.1 where we are required to get the electorate, to seek the consent of the electorate by referendum or Act 34 hearings?
It does not overrule that, no. Those are specific statutory requirements.
Okay, so if
This court case said, absent statutory requirement, you can't compel or a Board of Elections has no authority to place an advisory referendum on the ballot.
But we do we not?
Pardon me?
We still maintain our rights?
Mrs. Scheer, could we wait till Mrs. Mengel is finished and then
If in
ask
fact-
questions, please?
If in fact you meet the conditions requiring an Act 34 referendum, then of course you preserve your rights to have that. But the conditions have to exist.
Well, see, that's my concern tonight because of the time, because Dr. Kersing would like to bring the question of a second high school to this board next month, because this is the last time that there is an opportunity to attempt this. I would like to preserve my rights, but before making any motion, I do want to hear from other board members. But please help me, Solicitor. The Act 34 hearing, one that has me deeply concerned, was the one that was held for the Walton Farm School. We held a hearing. I was in attendance that evening, and I recall all of those that came to the podium to testified against the building of Walton Farm. The board went ahead and voted for that school. I do not see how that hearing under Act 34 met the letter or the spirit of the law under the statutes. I do not understand that, how that was allowed to happen.
Well, the purpose of an Act 34 hearing is to present to the public facts for the educational reasons, financial aspects of the project, and to allow an opportunity for the public to comment on these matters. However, and that was done. That's the whole purpose of the Act 34 hearing. I know certain board members express themselves. I know members of the public express themselves. Those who express themselves in writing, those matters were forwarded to the Department of Education. However, the project was approved, and procedure was followed.
Okay, well, where I'm having a problem is where we have, under the statute, we are required to get the consent of the electorate.
Only if certain conditions exist. And that is in the event that maximum building construction cost authorization exceeds the aggregate building expenditure standard. And that's a standard set forth by the Department of Education. Then you would need to submit the question to the electorate for their approval before you can construct. We never got to that point. That condition was never met. We never exceeded the building expenditure standards set forth by the Department of Education, and that is why you never went to a referendum. And you won't know whether you go to a referendum on this project until that particular condition is faced. And if that condition is faced and we exceed that standard, then you would go to a referendum. But at this particular point, it is premature to address.
Okay, but Solicitor, I'm challenging you on the integrity of the Act 34, which I feel is left in wanting.
Well, you'd have to attack the legislature for passing it.
I'm sorry.
I mean, we set it up. We went through the procedure. We had the notes taken, the transcript made, and we followed through. That was all submitted to the Department of Education. However, how that is treated once they receive those, the transcript, is within the Department of Education. The legislature set up a procedure, and that was followed.
Okay,
As far as the integrity of the
we set
procedure,
up an
that
Act
was
34 hearing.
Yeah.
We solicited for testimony. Those that testified against it, and 8 board members voted for it.
That's correct.
Okay, where's the consent of the electorate?
Wait.
Well, there is no referendum. When we talk about the consent of the electorate, you're referring to the referendum and to the conditions which I referred to you in the statute. The Act 34 is merely, as I said to you, to present to the public the facts and the educational reasons for doing the project, financial aspects, and it allows the opportunity for the public to comment on these particular matters. And the public did comment. What weight was given to those comments that were forwarded to the Department of Education is within the department. However, the procedure, the integrity of the procedure was followed. I can't answer as to the weight given by the department on the comments made either by dissenting board members or the public.
Okay, well then let me close my turn, President Bowman. I may put a motion up after hearing others, but I do want to close by saying that I'm most disappointed to receive this opinion tonight as I walked in the door. I would like to have had this earlier. This is a matter of great importance, and though I hold the solicitor in great esteem, something of this matter I would like to have had in advance so that if I wish, at my expense, to get a second opinion from another attorney, I could have had time to do so.
Let me say this. I forwarded this opinion to this board last week. I want you, you've made the statement that you received it this evening. I made copies this evening when I learned that you did not have a copy or Mrs. Sherr did not have a copy. But let me assure you that this opinion was forwarded last week before the weekend to the board.
Well, then my grievance should be noticed. That's it. Go ahead.
Did I go next, Dick? Sure. Okay, you're right.
That's okay. Go ahead, Tom.
He was second before.
Mr. Potash, let's refer to 701.1.
That is correct.
And that, you would agree, definitely it pertains to Act 34, correct?
Yes, that is.
Okay. I'm obviously not an attorney, however, this has been explained to me by an attorney, and the attorney explains to me that, let's not talk about if we exceed expenditures, but if you read 701.1 clearly, it clearly states referendum or public hearing required prior to construction release. And when you keep reading it, public hearing is all...
Mr. Clemens, would you use the mic?
All the time, referendum appears before public hearing, whenever it's written in here. My question to you tonight, do you know, in your best opinion, are there any other school districts operating in the state of Pennsylvania using referendum in lieu of an Act 34 when it comes time to financing a large expenditure project such as a high school?
I know of none. I can only assure you, and I have reread the section of 701.1, that the only time a referendum is required is when the conditions I just set forth are there. Under no circumstances are you permitted a referendum based on this opinion otherwise. You have a hearing, an Act 34 hearing, which you must have, and you may have 2 Act 34 hearings if after the bids come in and they exceed your maximum building construction cost by 8%. Then you have another hearing. But that's it. The referendum is specifically saved for that one set of circumstances when you exceed the aggregate building expenditure standard set by the Department of Education. And if you've gotten another opinion to the contrary, believe me, it's wrong.
Charlie, are you finished, Tom? You wanna go?
I had a couple more questions.
Then finish.
Okay. I'd agree with you, now's not the time for a non-binding referendum. I'm sorry, a binding referendum. I'd agree that it's not time for a binding referendum. I agree with our president that it's time to make a vote in March. I still don't understand why a non-binding referendum could not be submitted to the Board of Elections just about the way you wrote it. The only thing that I want to question on the way that you were directed to write it was if this could be done, it would be my recommendation that upon the vote that we took in March, the voters would have already known which direction that the board is planning to take. So therefore, a decision would have been made by the time it was placed on the ballot for May. So if you are going to put a question, and I wrote the question down before I came tonight, would it not be better to write the question, do you agree with the recent decision made by the North Penn School Board regarding a second high school?
I don't think that accepts it.
It's basically the same thing, but the decision was already made. It's basically, do you agree with the decision that was made?
Because we don't know what that decision's going to
Because
be.
we don't know what that decision's going to be.
You know, I must advise you, if you submitted this petition and the question, and they turned you down, number one, you couldn't get it. There's no way you could compel them to put it on. If, in fact, you submitted it, and for somehow or some way they felt that they could put it on, somebody could come in, a person or a group of persons or a representative group could come in and get an injunction to have a court strike it down. And that's what that Blythe County court case says.
Okay, I'm finished.
Okay.
Vicki,
Mr.
before you
Potter?
speak, just a second, just so that the board understands where we're heading on this, after we're done asking questions of Mr. Potash, if someone wants to make a motion with respect to a referendum, irrespective of what Mr. Potash has told us, which we still can do, then you make it, put it on the floor. If it is seconded, we will then table it and vote on it during the voting part of the meeting. Do we agree with that? Okay? That'll be our procedure if two board members want to make a motion and second it. Okay, now, Mrs. Chair.
Okay. Mr. Potash, we have received a number of opinions in the past, that followed the one that you did announce regarding Mr. McAdoo's discouragement of non-binding, but you did articulate one that gave us the process and procedure that we would follow for advisory and non-advisory, advisory and binding referendums. You set out the process that we would follow very recently. As far as the Blythe case, my concern is it involves a township. The school code, the Pennsylvania School Code, and Act 34 itself is specific to school districts. It places authority and responsibilities and limitations on school boards that do not apply to municipalities. A part of 701.1, as you very well have highlighted tonight, is a provision where the Department of Ed would require the school board to go to a referendum. What's on the table tonight is not the board being forced to a referendum, but initiating a referendum to meet the opening clause, which is very much separated from the requirement by the Department of Ed, but rather a discretionary decision on the part of the board that prior to the construction or lease of a new building or significant construction of 20% or more additions to existing buildings, you shall obtain the consent of the electorate either through referendum or Act 34 hearing. There would not be an or there if it were mandatory, but there is a choice, there is an option. Mr. Clemens has spoken with attorneys. I've also had the laws there, along with the Hempfield decision. The reasons why it was turned down could be very irrelevant to our authority to be able to seek a referendum. I've also spoken to state representatives. I put it to them very clearly, and they researched it and came back to me. I said, does this board or does it not have the authority to initiate a referendum under the provisions that you've given to us as agents of the state legislature to seek a referendum if we so choose? And they've said, absolutely. It is there in Section 701.1 of the school code that it is your responsibility to decide which way you want to meet that consent requirements, and then you go from there. But at the state level, they're working to make it mandatory, but at this point, they say it's there for the public at the will of the board. And therefore, I certainly would support a motion, and then we could seek further advisement, separating the different legalities that rule over municipalities versus those laws that rule over our school district.
May I say something? Sure. I feel it incumbent upon me to at least comment. As I understand what Mr. Potash has said, is that he has rendered an opinion that, in fact, the Board of Election does not have the authority to place on ballot a non-binding referendum. That's all he said. He did not say, as I understand it, that this board does not have the right and the privilege to entertain a petition through the form of a motion to see if the Board of Election will in fact put that for a referendum, that is on the ballot. So I think all he's saying to you, as I understand it, is you've asked me to do some research and render an opinion. I have done that for you. You then, as a board, have the right and the privilege to put it and solicit the Board of Election to place it on the referendum, on the ballot. I think that's all you're saying, isn't it?
Dr. Persing, I think that brings a lot of clarification. The election board cannot initiate, but that doesn't prevent us from initiating. And that is the difference. The semantics that have confused the issues many times, saying that election boards can't do this. Well, no, they can't, not without our sponsorship.
You must initiate as a board.
Thank you.
Let me answer one more thing. Mrs. Scherr raised the question of an opinion I gave in 1990 and October of 94. That particular time, I was directed to address the board on procedures for placing a question on the ballot. I think at that time, Donna Mengel said, Charles, will you be prepared? We've got all these other opinions and everything else. Would you be prepared to tell us how we go about placing a question, on the procedures for placing a question on the ballot? At that time, if I recall, we had a meeting, but we couldn't address it that particular evening. For some reason, something came out, and I remember I gave a memorandum out without having an opportunity to discuss it on the procedures. I do recall a later meeting at this board where the question was again raised by Mrs. Mengel. We ought to discuss it. And if I recall correctly, the president of the board says, let's postpone that till the end of February, then we'll discuss it, because they were waiting for the reports from the Pennsylvania Economy League and other information to come in. And that's why the issue is being addressed this evening. But that was the sequence of events to the best of my recollection.
True. Is there anyone that wants to make ask more questions?
Dick,
Yes,
I have one comment I'd like to make before we go. And it is in direct reference to the Walton Farm Act 34 hearing. I believe that is a case in point of why final decisions regarding construction projects should be left to the board. There should be no doubt at this time that the Walton Farm Elementary School was and remains absolutely crucial part of fulfilling our requirements from the General Assembly to provide for the students of this district.
Thank you, Mr. White.
Dick, the only comment I have is this letter from Charlie to Dr. Persing is dated February 17th, and it's the 23rd. And I think that we should have had it before now,
I presume
either
you
by
mailed it,
courier
right?
or fax.
By fax?
Then the district had it on the 17th,
But the
evening of the 17th. At the
beach was
latest.
Friday.
Fine, there's still Monday.
I guess adding to my confusion, Mr. Bowman, is that as I look around at members here of the board that had called the state, had called the county, I see members of the press that have done stories and have made their own calls to the state, to the county, to officials that could comment on this, that nobody came up with this information except Solicitor Potash this evening, that our County Board of Elections couldn't cite this case, that the attorneys that anybody had spoken to, nobody cited this case, and this is coming before us tonight. If there are no further questions, I will place the motion because I am uncomfortable and I want to preserve my rights.
There's one other question I'd like to answer. We are dealing with two counties also. We're dealing with Bucks County and Montgomery County because we do have a part of the school district in Bucks County. We will require, if the board determines to go ahead with filing a petition with the Board of Elections, it will have to do so for both counties.
Fine.
Because of that small section line election?
That is correct.
Would you like to entertain a motion, Mrs. Mengel?
Yes, Mr. President, I move that the solicitor be directed to prepare and take all steps necessary to place an appropriately worded referendum question on the ballot of the May 1995 primary election to determine whether the voters favor or oppose constructing a second high school in the North Penn School District.
Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mrs. Burkowski. Is there a move to table? Or I can declare that, yeah.
You can do that.
We'll table that until the voting portion of the meeting. So time to move on.
Thank you very much.
It's now time for the first audience of citizens. And what I'd like to remind everyone is that you 3-minute maximum and only items which are currently on the agenda to be voted on. Sir,
My name is John Fisher, 1453 Cathy's Lane, North Wales, Pennsylvania, and that's Upper Gwinnett Township that I live in. And I am referring to item 5F under the Superintendent's Report, number 12-95. And it says here, recommend approval of attendance area realignment as set forth on the map. Students in areas 1, 2, and 3 will attend A.M. Culp Elementary School effective September 1995. I feel this has to happen, but I just want to say as a citizen, as we look at the planning of the school district, and I think I am given the right to make this opinion, we plan to build 2 elementary schools, and according to our 90th day enrollment figures, on the 90th day, the one elementary school we built with a capacity of 750 has 730 students, and for next year it even is worse. I just wonder what kind of planning was done to be able to produce this kind of situation. And secondly, at our last board meeting, a question was put to Art Wood about the expandability of the Bridle Path School, at which time he testified that there practically was none. And I just want to go on record, and we'll go on record in the general part of our discussion tonight, that I think our school has got to do more planning in terms of realignment, and I also think we have to do more planning about expandability of schools, and I will speak to that specifically later. And I would ask Mr. Weir at this time to help out to make things better for later on, if he would give to the board, all 9 members of the board, keep one for Mrs. Leahy, our solicitor, and also to Mr. Persing, a folder which has the comments that I will make later, and if they wish to pre-read them before I make them, that might make things a little bit more expeditious later.
Okay, that's fine. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Fisher. Does that conclude your comments?
That concludes my comments at this time.
Next person, Mr. Robbins. Yes.
Gary Robinson, Hatfield Township. I want to make some comments concerning the resolution that is next on the agenda here concerning voting to amend the 1990 and 92 bond agreements. Based on financial records that I got earlier this week from this school district office, in January of 94, there was a $10 million bond, a Note A in the amount of $25 million, and a Note B in the amount of $25,619,000, all for a 1-month increase of school district debt of $60,600,000 in a single month. Where did those 2 $50 million bonds go to? I see a conflict here when you say that you're going to retire a $25 million note, which is a short-term indebtedness. A bond is a registered security used for certain long-term capital projects. It looks like there's been a track record here, if you go back and look at past refinancings, where short-term notes, short-term indebtedness, has been paid off using long-term bond money. That seems to create a conflict from the standpoint that you end up using improperly long-term debt money for short-term indebtedness and improper application of the money. Additionally, according to the 63 or the 93 audit for the school district, it showed a face value of bond indebtedness of over $76 million, while tax revenues were $66 million, a $10 million difference. Our debt face value, not including interest, exceeded tax revenue by $10 million. Last year, tax revenues were up 4.9, almost $5 million to 69 million tax revenues, yet bond indebtedness on the face value was 99 million, 30 million greater than the tax revenues. I think it is time we stop this school board from abusing the taxpayers. You're destroying our educational capability. When we go bankrupt, none of our kids are going to get educated.
Thank you. In the front here, Bob.
Bob Graziano from Tolminson. I had a 5-minute speech. Now I have a 3-minute speech. During the teacher strike, you built your case by making your position public and have overwhelming public support to show for it.
Excuse me, Bob.
This is just an intro into the referendum.
Okay.
Thank you. The union never made its offer public until they legally had to. They obviously feared the reaction to the facts. The high school issue is similar. We've never seen a comprehensive position paper covering any of the credible proposals. Having to do the analysis myself, I've taken the figures that we've gotten from PEL and PlanCon and other places and done some of my own analysis, and I have found that the supporters of the new high school who want to build a 1,200 student high school expandable to 1,600 are building it for what amounts to a peak in the year 2006 of 500 students. That's when you take into account the VOTEC students. Building a 500-student school is crazy at the high school level. Also, capacity isn't reached until 1999, not 98, as we frequently hear.
Mr. Graziano, please keep your remarks to the items that we're going to vote on tonight. Whether or not it's a new high school is not the question, is whether we should vote on and allow the public to vote on that, please. You can still give and provide these comments at the second audience of citizens if you'd like to do that.
Okay, fine. My support of a referendum came largely because of the audience of citizens last week. One speaker spent a few minutes reminding us of the sacrifices made to preserve our right to vote. Americans, like millions killed and wounded in wars in the last half-century or so. Americans like my dad, who was wounded and spent months in a German POW camp. When the speaker lifted his American flag, the flag raised over Iwo Jima 50 years ago, I heard snide remarks and laughter in this audience. That offended me. Too many have suffered to preserve their freedom to speak here for them to laugh at the display of the flag. They're out there preserving our right to speak and our right to vote. From some speakers, I heard an arrogance toward voters that I didn't realize had made its way so far from Washington. I was struck by the fear of the voters in their voices. The voters apparently are smart enough to educate themselves and vote you into office, but too stupid to understand this issue. We're not talking about putting ballot boxes at the grocery store for trivial issues, as one speaker said last week. This community is divided on a very important issue, although I don't believe we're as divided as we're being led to believe, and I think that's why the opinion of the voter is feared. Mrs. Mengel has challenged you on many different issues. She has expressed the willingness to have her beliefs challenged by a referendum vote. How about the rest of you? Do you fear the free and open discussion of the facts? Do you fear the voters may prove you wrong? Has the arrogance of Washington infected you too? I hope not. One more comment, and then I'll save the rest for later. Whether you like it or not, there's a referendum in November, and it's called the election. This issue does not die necessarily next month. If the will of the voters is to approve candidates opposed to a new high school, it will not be too late to stop this project. We may all be back here again next year with new enrollment numbers, more taxpayers' money spent, and more time used up. One way or another, you're going to find out what the voters want. Why not find out now? It's the smart thing to do. Thank you. And if anyone is interested, I have more copies of this.
Dr. Thomas.
I'm Judith Thomas from Hatfield Township. I have a few questions. I would like to know if somebody could give some figures and objective opinion whether the referendum issue is really an issue. Do we know enough facts in terms of how much is it going to cost the taxpayers in yearly taxes, whether we add on to the high school or build a new high school? What is the final figure for the new addition, and what is the final figure for the new school? How close these figures are to each other?
We don't have those numbers just yet.
You don't have those numbers?
We will be discussing them at the committee meeting next
I understand,
on
but
Tuesday, and the final vote will be on that Thursday.
right. But I believe that without knowing those numbers, it's not really responsible to vote for a referendum, because it might not be an issue at all. If the numbers are very close together, the citizens might find it that there is not a big difference. My number 2 question is, I believe that the board members who favored the addition to the old high school are in favor of it because supposedly it would result in no increase in property taxes. Is that the case?
That's not true.
Okay.
We know that there's a cost associated with that that'll be brought out next month. And whatever that cost is will have to be financed through either increased taxes yearly or through a bond fund, which minimizes the pain each year. So
right, but everybody is aware of the fact that there will be a tax increase, whether we add on to the high school or whether we build a new one.
I would certainly hope so, that they know that, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Ma'am in the front.
Frances Fennell, Lansdale. I still feel strongly that a referendum needs to be held. I found several comments last week quite disturbing. It was stated that if people wanted this referendum, they would have called to let the board members know. But they haven't called, so everyone's assuming they're either disinterested or agree with the board members who want the second high school. You know what they say about assuming. My father was a Lansdale Borough Councilman for 12 years. Because he was a public servant, people felt they could call our house at all hours of the day and night. My father always considered it part of his service. However, his family didn't always feel that way. Having dinner interrupted often, calls early as 6 a.m. and as late as 11:30 a.m., which are actually being generous, were handled at our home. I feel that all of you put enough time into your public service, along with working regular jobs, that your home is where you should spend private time with your family, uninterrupted by phone calls on items that can be expressed and stated at meetings such as this. I'm sure others feel the same way, so please don't assume uncaring or agreement when calls are not received at your residence. A safer assumption would be that some are considerate of others' private time. Several comments were made that people who have no children in our public schools should have no say, and/or that their say is unimportant on what goes on within this district. I'm sure these people who send their children to private schools, childless couples, and senior citizens would be more than happy to have no say on these issues if those who wish to make everyone's decisions for them would pick up those, quote, unimportant people's share of the school tax. I'm sure then that those who wish to make those decisions would then see how important those people are. The past and present boards have made decisions that have greatly affected this community in negative ways many times. We have asked them not to sell buildings such as Line Street, Speck, and Hancock to rent them out. We were told we might need them later. The board said no, they know what they're doing. Sure enough, we needed them. They were asked to build 3 additional elementaries for the expanding population. No, we only built 2. Now we need the 3rd. All that land on the side of the high school could have been used to help with this current problem, but did our boards do it? No, they sold the land to a housing development. The taxpayers lose again. To To blindly follow others and not question things or change things that you cannot stand by or believe in simply because these people were elected to an office is a very dangerous way of life, as history has proven time and time again. Please also remember that not everyone who lives within this district voted for you, and those who did may very well have changed their minds on certain issues such as this, and as the gentleman earlier stated, will in fact let you know that in election time. I wish everyone would remember that Mr. Bowman's stand and Ms. Mengel's stand both require a stretch of time equal to each other, as stated by Ms. Scheer last week. Nothing is done as easily as Mr. Bowman and those who agree with him want everyone to believe. I really like the concept of Leeds and Northrop being used. However, this option I don't believe is viable due to the fact that chemicals were used in that building. Approval, I believe, would have to be obtained by agencies such as the EPA for safety reasons. Last time I looked, we still live in a democratic county. Dictatorship is not welcome or wanted on this board, in this community, or in this country. This taxpayer chooses not to blindly follow where led. A referendum is needed. Thank you.
Hi, my name's Jeff Allison from Lansdale. Just wanted to get up and also voice my opinion that a referendum is something that is good and can help to bring us all back together. My fan club. And based upon some campaign literature from the 91 campaign that I was handed tonight by someone, I'm not sure who, our board president at the time felt that all bond issues should be approved to voter approval, as well as many other things that I'm not sure our board president would agree with today. I think it's important to have integrity in our elected officials, both before and after the election.
I'd like to comment on that since you brought that up. That ad was put in the paper totally without my knowledge. I did not agree with it then, and I don't agree with it in this case. I said I'm willing to look at every issue and go from there. That's what I said. The North Penn Taxpayers Association, Mr. Dick Fraze, put that ad in the paper. I had never seen that before it went in. I was shown it afterwards, and at that point in time, there was a gentleman's agreement with the whole group that said, if anything goes in, printed advertisements, everyone that has party to that, all the candidates, will in fact get to approve it. That was done unbeknownst to me at the time.
Okay, there's also an article here from the Montgomery County, from the Montgomeryville Spirit, from March of '91 with interviews with you that says basically the same thing.
Well, I can't help that I'm misquoted, but I was not said.
But just to revoice my opinion, I think a referendum is very vital to have, and a non-binding referendum doesn't do any harm.
Thank you. Walter? Ask Scott how many times he hasn't misquoted.
Just in case you people are wondering if I have my flag, there it is.
Walter, please state your name and address.
Walter Kuzma, Tomenson Township. I wish to thank those veteran members of Post 933 Hatfield, American Legion William E. Hare Post, Lansdale, Veterans of War, Foreign Wars Post 32, Lansdale, and veteran members of Moose, Eagle, and other clubs in this area for attending this school board meeting. Today is also an appropriate day to celebrate because 50 years ago today, our gallant Marines raised our flag in triumph on Mount Suribachi over Iwo Jima. Sometimes fate has a strange way of coming to us and making us accountable for our past words and deeds. Tonight is such a night. I have here literature, and I have the same things that he had. 1991 campaign for school director. Your picture's on it, your name is on it, and I have this highlighted.
Still not done.
Donna Mango, Teresa Prykowski, and Dick Bowman. You won state seats on the school board. Here are some of the things you people agreed to support, and two of them have supported it.
I've already stated that advertisement was put in.
Did you put in a retraction in the paper?
What does this have to do with the agenda, Mr. Bowman?
Just a minute, I'm getting to that.
Did you put a retraction in the paper that you didn't agree with that?
No, I didn't.
Well, then you agreed to it, or you wouldn't have done it. Number 1, it says, submit all bond issues to voter approval. Big debt decisions should be made by the voters who have to pay. That's one of them. If you didn't retract it, you're stuck with it. Show respect for public opinion and our right to know. Okay, now we have 2 members supporting these promises to the people. Guess who isn't? Mr. Bowman thinks he knows more than all of us, and he should make a referendum decision for us poor uninformed voters. How wrong his thinking is. But now comes a time to prove that he was speaking the truth and supports referendums, or was he lying to the voters in this North Penn area? As my friend the Indian chief would ask, are you standing by your word, supporting referendums, or were you and are you speaking with a forked tongue? Thank you.
Thank you.
Karen Clark, Montgomery Township. Last Tuesday's board meeting, Mr. Bowman stated several times that because the board was fully informed, they were the only ones capable of making the decision about this high school. And I'd like to test that premise. Is the board aware that the 95-96 program of studies at the high school added 5 new art classes, 7 new home ec courses, an SAT prep class under both the English and math department that has the same course code, 1 new math course, and 1 new gifted social studies course? The district deleted 2 general science courses, an American government course for North Monco students, and Telecom 1 and 2, which was dropped this year because the teacher was ill, has not been replaced, and I don't think it will be, and that's a real shame because that was a hands-on, creative tech prep course that could have been a model for the rest of your tech prep courses. Do you realize that according to your Plan Con A, the new high school that's proposed will have only 28 regular classrooms, 4 special ed classrooms, and 11 tech prep classrooms? If you know this, start calling it what it is. You're not building a comprehensive high school, you're building a magnet tech prep school.
Ma'am, please.
This is about the referendum.
Great, let's get to that.
I know that Dr. Fike already recanted what he told us last week at the board meeting about 9th grade honors. And so we'll leave it till next year to see whether or not there will be. If the so-called pro-education board members are aware of all these things that I've stated, I suggest you give that label up, because clearly I don't think you're pro-education. You appear to be rubber stampers for an administration with a political agenda, which I believe is OBE. If any member of this board is unaware of these facts that come from your own documents, then you're not as well as informed as you think you are, and I think you need to vote for a referendum so that the community can become better informed.
I'm not going to read through this.
Thank you. Scared me.
My name is Nancy DeLucia. I live in Montgomery Township. And let me preface my remarks by saying I'd much rather be home tonight. I'm much more comfortable reading books to my kids than standing in front of a group of people. But I feel it's so important to address the issue of the referendum that I'm up here nervously talking. I brought with me information that I've amassed over the last few months as I've looked into the issue of the second high school. I've been to the school district. I've gotten every report that you folks have. I've talked to the people who wrote the Pell report. I've talked to the Department of Education people. And I feel as though I'm very well informed on the second high school versus the expansion question. I happen to believe we should build a second high school. But given all the information I've taken and all the time I've put into it, I'm certain that I haven't spent as much time as any of you board members have. That's why I believe that the democratic process is best served by you voting on the issue of the second high school. We elected you to make these kinds of difficult decisions. You've been through all this information. You've discussed it. You have more information than I have because I know you already had another meeting last Tuesday night, right? So you have more information than I have and that anyone out here has. And I think we need to trust our board, our elected officials, to do the right thing and do it now so that we don't postpone the high school for yet another year. This is my visual problem. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll take a 5-minute recess so that they can reset and change the tapes for the video. Speak specifically on the agenda items. Sir?
My name is Mike Tobias. I live in Upper Goyna Township, and I have 2 children that attend the North Penn School District. I'd like to address the issue of the referendum, and I'd like to start by asking Mrs. Scher what the current budget is for the North Penn School District.
$92 million.
$92 million. And we heard you announce earlier this evening that you would attack a very rigorous schedule of reviewing those expenditures throughout the month of April and May. You're going to be reviewing the 95, 96 expenditure. And it sounds like the board is very interested in understanding how those funds are expended. I believe the constituents of the North Penn School District have elected you to review those budget dollars, and you spend a lot of time reviewing them and making sure that money is spent appropriately. At a public hearing at the board meeting in October, I also listened to the various board members reiterate their position that they didn't want to abrogate their responsibility of making hard decisions and addressing hard issues by sending the contract negotiations with the teachers union to a binding arbitration. And you stood by the fact of wanting to review the requirements of the teachers union and negotiate with them. I'm very surprised that the board members would want to and elect to go to a referendum, and I do not support that action. I know you all work hard, and as has been mentioned earlier, you've spent a lot of time reviewing all of the facts and all of the figures associated with the need for a second high school. And I'm very confident in each and every one of your abilities to make the right decision for the school district.
Okay.
Hi, Rich LaCure, Patterson Drive in Upper Gwynedd. You know, if the subject wasn't so serious, I'd find it really comical that at this late date, as we approach the day of reckoning on a vote on the high school capacity issue, that we suddenly get passionate calls for a referendum. And we're not supposed to think that this is a delaying tactic. I don't buy it, and I know a lot of other people don't. On the high school capacity issue, the numbers have been studied ad nauseum. We've heard from citizens for months, for longer than that even. And despite some brave statements to the contrary, I don't believe anybody on the board is going to change their mind or their vote on the basis of a non-binding referendum. So let's get on with it. Let's get on with business. Let's deep six the idea of a referendum. That's where it belongs. Let's vote on the high school capacity issue once and for all. And let's get to the other business. There's other serious issues in this school district that require attention immediately. Let's get on with it. Thank you.
My name is Eileen McMullen. I'm from Lansdale. I do wish we could get a referendum on. I have my doubts we will, but it is my wish that we could. I believe the community is very evenly divided on this issue, and from the viciousness of the attacks just in the audience here, I think that the only calming effect afterwards, whichever decision is made, is going to be to say, well, you wanted it. Whatever the board does, they are going to be attacked. And I don't believe it's fair. I just don't believe it's fair. I think the only easy solution to getting this community back together is to say, this is what you wanted. You wanted all along, you got it. Thank you.
My name is Linda Totten from Montgomery Township. I want to comment on the referendum, and I can't help but comment on the comment about viciousness, because the only viciousness I've heard is the viciousness about Mr. Bowman's integrity tonight. I do believe that integrity is a lot of the issues surrounding the referendum. The integrity of this board becomes questionable when we submit to a public referendum. The integrity of this board remains intact when it goes ahead and reinforces the authority that was placed in it by the elections that have taken place in the past. So I urge you not to consider a public referendum, but to move forward, as the gentleman prior said, with the business at hand. Thank you.
Lynn Janoff from Lansdale. And I would like to address two issues tonight, but I will only address the one now and the other one after your business meeting. I strongly oppose a referendum on whether or not a second high school should be built. That decision is yours to make. You were elected to the school board to make these difficult decisions. In 1991, a prior board realized that the issue of increased enrollment at the high school level needed to be addressed. They also realized what a monumental and time-consuming task it would be to gather, investigate, and compile the necessary information. For that reason, the board appointed a task force to do this work, enabling the board to make an informed decision. It took us nearly a year to research and compile this information. I hope all of you on this board have read this in its entirety. The information found here and the additional information you have received since then is what you should be basing your decision on. Although this report has been available to the public since November 1992, only a small percentage of the voters have actually read it. I believe it is required reading to make a decision of this magnitude. I'm sure some people are thinking, Lynn, you don't want this to go to referendum because you're afraid a majority will vote against the second high school. And they're right. I do fear just that. However, I believe in this situation, what may be popular opinion is not necessarily what is right for our children. This is your decision to make, as uncomfortable as it may be. And remember that the right choice isn't always the popular one.
I'm Janet Volpe from Tomanson Township. I walked in on the discussion of Act 34. Act 34, in my opinion, gives you specific guidelines to follow pertaining to building a new school. I'd like to quote a relative section of this legislation, which I believe a school board member has already quoted from Act 34. The board of the school directors of any school district, etc., shall not construct, enter into contract, or to lease a new school building, etc., without the consent of the electors, obtained by a referendum or without holding a public hearing as hereinafter provided. End of quote. You, the school directors, are upholding the law by taking this vote tonight to obtain the consensus of the electors. Let's just take a moment and look at the phrase, consent of the electors, that is stated in Act 34. In other words, to obtain approval from electors or voters that have elected you as school directors. By the way, community members who have not registered to vote have until April the 18th to do so you can exercise your right to vote. A referendum will give to you an accurate consensus of the voters or electors. Reasons for a referendum. I believe a school board mentioned a phrase or posed a question of how it would be worded on the referendum. I'm not going to get it accurate, but here's a suggestion. Should the North Penn School District build a second high school? Yes or no? Election day is well advertised and is already marked on many calendars. The polls are open 7 a.m. to 8 p.m., and there are approximately 40 voting districts for you to go to. The voters can cast their vote in the privacy of a voting booth without the to-do of public limelight. certain people in the district seem to have needed or felt the need to push for a decision to build a new high school by this March 16th. My husband and I are for deadlines and setting goals, but a question arises in our mind when there is a heavy-handedness in making such major decisions. It reminds us, as a salesman, quickly asking you to sign on the dotted line before you read the fine print or have all your questions answered. Do we really know what we are getting for a $41 million high school? A shell. This $41 million shell for a school does not include annual operating expenses, employment of staff, and the list goes on. What about the course selection for the students attending this school? Will there be parity between the high schools? Will this even be another high school or a vo-tech school? At a school board meeting last summer during the architectural's presentation, he mentioned a school within a school, which is a concept that has been associated with a new educational reform that has been mandated by the state called outcome-based education. Outcome-based education is an educational reform that, in order to implement, is extremely costly. Are we currently going down this new educational reform track? Because if we are, we will probably need another 2 elementary schools along with the new high school.
Mrs. Volpe, please. And you said you came in late to the meeting. You missed the original statement. These are comments for only on items that we're about to vote on. So please,
it's
if you
to
want
the
to
referendum.
then talk to the referendum.
Okay. I'll talk to more about the referendum. It appears a couple of school directors, which I picked up on briefly, have supported referendums in the past in 1991. They have now said that they are shirking off their responsibilities, or people are now saying, if they were elected to speak for us. And now have some members of the community echoing this line of thinking. Well, I guess then over the past years, elected Montgomery County officials and other elected officials have shirked their duties by placing a referendum on the ballot and asking for a voter's approval, such as a referendum that asked electors if we should build a new prison or create a county health department, etc. Was this wrong for these elected officials to do? No, in actuality, they and you will not be shirking your duties of elected officials, but exercising the law by asking for voters' consent on a $41 million decision to build or not to build a new high school. Oh, by the way, the voters voted yes and to spend their tax dollars on a prison and creating a county health department. These informed voters could justify spending their tax dollars. My husband.
We also have a 3-minute limit. So
one more statement. My husband and I are asking you, our school directors, to vote for a referendum which by law places decision in the hands of the people who voted for you.
Thank you.
Sorry.
I had the lady coming up. You can go next then, all right?
I'm Ann Ogilvie from Talmadge Township. I'd like to speak to the issue of voting on a referendum on the second high school. We've been told that the purpose of a referendum would be to allow taxpayers to vote on the issue. But will taxpayers be voting on the issue of whether to build a new high school and whether that's the best solution to our overcrowding, or will they be voting against more taxes? Certainly, this anger that taxpayers are feeling against all taxes punishes and paralyzes us at the local level. It punishes the local school district, which we are all proud of, and the children whom we all care about. The appropriate place to put our energy is on the state level. Pennsylvania state law needs to be changed. Local school boards need the freedom to give tax relief to those residents who genuinely need it. There's another reason that I feel that a referendum is inappropriate. We already have a structure in place to accommodate making decisions for the school district. The taxpayers of the North Penn community elect representatives for the direct purpose of making these decisions. You are those representatives. Your responsibility in making these decisions involves many processes. Assessing the needs of the school district and its students, identifying and prioritizing those needs, researching any and all possible solutions, and carefully deliberating the solutions to choose the one which will best satisfy the need. You are the structure we rely on. to make these decisions. The North Penn Board of School Directors has spent years of research through population studies, task forces, and committees. You've spent thousands of dollars to gather statistics, expert opinions, and advice, and you have spent hundreds of hours deliberating and debating the issues in order to make a wise and informed decision. For you to now decline to make this decision, to hand over the responsibility of making the decision to a populace that has not had the benefit of your research, your committees, your statistics, your opinions, your deliberation, and your debate, would be irresponsible of you as a board and as individual board members. From your in-depth study of this issue, I believe that every one of you sitting on this board knows that building must take place to accommodate our growing student population. I also believe that every one of you knows that this building would cost millions of dollars, whether it be a new building or in addition to the present building. Will we spend $42 million for a new second high school, which will adequately meet our students' needs? Or will we spend $25, $30 million, $32 million to add on and create a mega school where students spill off the assembly line? Certainly, this has been a difficult decision for you to make. But your unwillingness as a board to make this decision has hurt the community. The indecision continues to fuel controversy, unrest, and ill will within this community. The community will continue to be divided until you make the decision you were elected to make. The land has been purchased. The students are here. Please have the courage to make a school board decision on the second high school. Thank you.
They're on us for a second. Go ahead.
My name is Charles David Bailey, live in Upper Gwinnett Township. David Hume was an observer of British society for many years, and he saw kings beheaded. He saw people lose their liberties a little at a time. His summary was, we lose our freedoms a little at a time. I don't understand how anyone can come up here and say the democratic process is best served by depriving the people of the vote. That sounds like democratia to me, not our kind of democracy. This issue has a broad public interest. 2/3 of the people pay taxes and get no benefit from the money spent. The average homeowner spends $190 per month in rent to the school board. I say rent because if a homeowner does not pay it, the school board can confiscate his property and sell it at auction. The average renter pays a like amount. If you don't believe it, think of what would happen if there were no school tax. The cost of owning a home would immediately decline by $190 a month, and a lot of people would move out of apartments, and that would continue to happen until apartment owners dropped their rents down to where it was again competitive with home ownership. So the cost is high to everyone, and everyone has an interest in this. It's a broad issue. I think a referendum is needed before you make such a commitment of this, which binds every citizen of this community to whatever your decision is. I think a referendum would serve a positive need. It would create debate over the issue. It would bring out a lot of facts which are now hidden. I hear a lot of people say the school board knows more than anybody else because they've been studying this for a long time. And while that may be true in part, I would like for you to know that the school board has misrepresented a lot of facts. Their Plan Con says that we have about 64 rooms in the high school which have a maximum capacity of 25 students. I invite anyone to go to that school and look at those rooms. That's what it says. It does the arithmetic and it comes up with 2814 maximum capacity for the school. They multiply by 90% and say the functional capacity is 2533. That's the document they sent to the state for approval. You go to that school and you look at it, and you will see just about every standard classroom is equipped with 30 chairs, 30 desks, okay? Except for the few that are equipped with 35 desks.
Mr. Bailey, please limit it to the items on the
Yes,
agenda, please.
I'm saying it's an important issue. I'm saying that there's a lot of misrepresentation of the facts right now. The public is not getting the straight scoop from the school board. Just go there and look at the rooms. You can see how many chairs are in there, and it's not 25. If you adjust for those, you come out with a capacity of 3,599 students. There's 685. It has room for 685 more desks than they state in the plan con. In addition to that, they could make
That's your three. Summarize, please.
I think that a useful public purpose can be served by having a referendum, because I think that means a lot of more accurate information will come out. We will have a better informed public, and we will have a better informed political decision when it's all done.
Thank you.
Hello, I'm Eileen Crawford of Upper Gwynedd. I am just compelled to say, having attended several of these meetings now, that I personally, and I hope everyone else in this room feels the same way, the school board is not the enemy of this community. Whether you agree or disagree with any individual members of the school board, and I certainly disagree with the viewpoints of several, the school board is not the enemy, nor is our solicitor the enemy, and nor are our administrators the enemies. And yet that seems to be the way we are constantly treating each other in these debates. And as a parent and a taxpayer, I am really tired of this. I would like to see a little bit more respect for the expertise of each person that sits up here, whether one agrees or disagrees with what they have to say. Now, about the referendum. The referendum is a very lousy idea. The referendum is a lousy idea because it's being brought in at the last minute again. Not only at the last minute, it's been brought up before. It's been brought before this board before as a suggested idea. But it was talked down then, it was discussed, it was dismissed as inoperable at the time. Now, this school board knows, I believe each member really does know, that you have undertaken the responsibility for making these decisions. Mr. Bowman eloquently stated that position last October. I will say, personally, it was a frustrating moment for me. But you made a very strong case about why it was important for the board to retain control over these types of serious decisions that face the community. So your responsibility to make those decisions is not to be used only when it's convenient to your political point of view. And that is something that I believe in each of your heart of hearts you know is right and is true. I'd say the only difference between October and now is that we're 4.5 months closer to an election. And I would hate to think that that kind of posturing is what is positioning this entire referendum discussion, and I personally believe that's what it is. I don't think we're discussing the validity of the referendum, and I don't think we're discussing the intelligence of our community. We have a very intelligent community, but we don't have a community that's been provided with the 700-page appendices to the task force report. Has every voter been given that? I don't think so. And every voter has not been given every other piece of information that they would need to make the informed, intelligent decision that this requires. We have tens of thousands of children that are counting on each and every one of us to look out for their best interests. And I expect each of you to do that when you discuss and vote on this issue tonight.
Thank you.
I'm Lori Holtz Anderson. I live at 308 Abbey Lane in Montgomery Township. I think that since we're all adults here and we all operate on the same calendar, we can be frank. I appreciate the passion and the thoughtfulness that lies behind both sides of the referendum issue, but we already have a referendum scheduled, and it's in November. This board that's here does not have the final say on whether or not we expand the Talmenson facility or build a second high school. And I think that we're wasting our time here. I would much rather have your energies and your time and the money we spend on our solicitor go towards useful things, getting the numbers that we need, getting the statistics that we need to make sensible decisions. Whatever a referendum would decide, we all know that the board that's elected in November will be elected in time to make the really final decision about the high school. I suggest that you table the referendum discussion, move on with anything else you have on your agenda, and we can all acknowledge that we'll take care of the decision, whatever decision it is, in November. Thanks.
So we have a line, we'll just continue to use the line over there.
Thank you.
Speed things up.
My name is Deborah Turner, and I'm from North Wales. I've chosen to speak up tonight, as difficult as that is for me, in regards to the observations I have made this evening. I arrived late this evening, and unfortunately I missed the first hour of the meeting because I was at my child's elementary school, which had a music program that could only fill, that we had enough seating capacity that we could only have 4th, 5th, and 6th grade parents, along with the children participating in the program. Now, the reason that is because of the size and the space. And last year, my children quietly watched as 1/3 of the student population of their school was redistricted to a new building because of the size and the lack of space in the existing one. 4 years ago, my children were redistricted because of the size of my community and the lack of room in the building. I moved here from another state, and like others like me, I've stayed. But I've seen the size of my community grow unbelievably large, and the lack of open space is getting fewer and farther between. My family and I aren't taking up space in my community. We are active members in various community activities. We pay our taxes to our community, and I work in the community, and I vote in this community. The last school board election, and several before it, I voted. I can't tell you who I voted for because I can't remember, but I know that I voted. And when I did, I felt my vote was representing my faith in the authority of you people to see to it that every North Penn student, present and future, will be taken into consideration on every decision that you make. I don't appreciate being told to vote for or against something I've asked you to decide upon. And guess what? You're not going to please everyone. So go for it and decide and stand firm in your elected decision. By the way, I was happy to hear of your visit to the high school, having lunch and among other things. And now I challenge you to visit every first grade class in our district and all 13 buildings in one day. Take their small size, double it because they will grow, and then use your imagination and put all of them in the current high school. And finally, I assume, since you all drive, come and drive through the developments, new and old, of Towmenson, Hatfield, Montgomery, North Wales, and Lansdale on a sunny day. See all the children in our North Penn community. Visit them all at lunch. See the moms, the young ones with the babies and strollers, and many with more on the way. These are who we are planning for. The future of our children's excellence in education depends on the decisions you make here, not just tonight, but every time you meet as the North Penn School Board. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Don Franks, and I'm from Upper Gwynedd. I want to speak to the issue of the advisory referendum. The North Penn School Board is made up of elected officials entrusted by the community with the responsibility to maintain and improve the quality of education in the North Penn area. As such, it is assumed that these dedicated individuals have interested enough in the welfare of our community to volunteer their time and talents will act in the best interest of the community they were elected to represent. The key word in that sentence is act. The current board is not demonstrated an ability to act. Since this board has been functioning with its current membership, the teachers remain without a contract. We're in need of a permanent superintendent of schools, and we have no decisions made yet on the new high school. There are also apparently several critical vacancies among school administrator positions in the district. I presume that the present board has invested the necessary effort to be informed as possible on the matter of the new high school. I also presume that as such, they are the most informed members of this community, and as such can make the best decision possible. And why would you expect a better decision from a voter referendum?
I would contend that most individual voters, at best, have a limited knowledge of the issues. And as been mentioned earlier, the amount of fine print involved, I would contend that you could ask the general public some of the specific questions you've asked the school board tonight to answer and get a non-answer. The individual choices of the voters would have to be less informed than the school board members, and surely most influenced by personal vested interests that are a single aspect of a very complex issue. There is no way that the school board can shirk their responsibility to make a decision by passing it on to a voter referendum. As mentioned earlier, also the innuendo was that our school board is assuming some of the arrogance of Washington. I would like to see us assume some of the responsibility that is lacking in Washington by making some decisions and taking some action. The responsibility is yours to act, to make the best possible decision based on the best information available, inexact and uncertain as it may be, using the best judgment you have and considering the best interest of most people in the community. No one can ask any more of you than that. The legacy you leave with this community will remain long after you leave this board. Don't let your tenure mark the beginning of a decline of our quality education system. Take the responsibility you've been entrusted with. Take the responsibility that you teach your children to have. You were elected to an office as guardians of our school system. You are informed, you are responsible, so take action, please.
Good evening. My name is Marge Stendhal. I'm from Lansdale. I have gotten up and I've spoken before the school board, and I've listened to a lot of the individuals that have spoken for both sides. And the question that continually comes to my mind about this referendum is, are we all talking about the same issue? It seems to me that so many individuals are so concerned about the rights to vote and what's politically correct. And I think that what we all can agree on is that we all have the right to vote. And we all exercised that right to vote when we voted for you to be in office and make the correct decisions, as we do so many of our other elected officials and other people that are in responsible positions. I can just imagine what this would be like if we, when in November when we voted for, the president and other individuals, and then, a difficult issue came to their table and they said, well, I don't think I can, make this decision, so we're going to turn it back to the people. Well, why did we elect you then? I really think that we have heard individuals that have said, things about voting and that sort of thing, and wait till November for referendum, and I disagree. I think that we all have, exercised our right to vote, and we have done that already, and now it's time that we allow you to do what we voted for you to do. The issue that I think that seems to be forgotten is what's most important at this time, and what's most important is the children. I think that every single person in this community is an intelligent individual and did so by exercising that right to vote. And that's why, we turn that over to you to be able to look at the facts and look at all the information that's presented to you, both in statistics and hopefully then visually going around to schools, talking. If you ask some of the students that are in here, both in elementary and high school levels, I think if you ask them, do they like to eat lunch at 10 o'clock in the morning? Why eat breakfast? Or some of them, having lunch at 1:30 in the afternoon, by that time, you might as well just go home. And that's the situation because of the situation with the way that school continues to grow, that they're forced to have these kinds of schedules. And I think that what's most important are the children and those that are coming up and those that are currently there. And a referendum is, I think, shirking off your responsibility. And I think the politically correct thing to do is to allow you to use your vote now. There is no need for a referendum. Make the right decision. It may not be the most popular one, but it will be the right one. Unlike other people who have been in history and, have taken a stand of leadership, and it hasn't been the most popular one, but in hindsight, looking back, it was the right one. And in hindsight, you're going to make the right one. Use the right intelligence, make the right decision. Thank you.
Hi, my name's Annette Rivera, and I live on Line Street in Lansdale. I'd like to talk with the board tonight about the issue of the overcrowding of Bridle Path and sending children back to A.M. Culp. I addressed a letter to Dr. Pershing, and I hope he passed it out to the members of the board this evening to review. I sent it out February the 16th. I'm very concerned with the numbers that I see attached to the agenda tonight. In looking at them, I wonder what the numbers would be in with the transfer of Bridle Path to A.M. Culp. In putting those children in addition to the numbers that are here already, I would think that the classroom size would be at jeopardy and the quality of education would be at risk. I would feel that the overcrowding now of A.M. Culp will be the next issue in another year or two to come. As a parent living on this borderline, of course, this is a tremendous burden on my shoulders, feeling that in 2 years my son may go through a third transfer. He spent kindergarten at A.M. Culp. I would have loved to have stayed there for the entire 6 years. Now that I'm back at Bridle Path for the first grade, I don't want to see him back at A.M. Culp for the second grade. In 2 years, we're going to see A.M. Culp be overcrowded, and I'm on the borderline. Who's going to move? Well, of course I will. And my child will be put through, again and again through transfers. I'm wondering if the board is looking at other considerations to increasing size of maybe the NAP school, that if right now A.M. Culp has modulars presently, if modulars would be added to the NAP school, 1 or 2 of the new developments whose children have never undergone a transfer yet. They are new to the area. They're not even in Bridle Path now. These are unaffected children. Maybe they could go to the NAP school into the new modulars, and there may be a smaller number of other people being rezoned so that it wouldn't create an island.
To answer your question, we looked at those different scenarios, and it was felt that if the one that's up for tonight affects the least amount of children in the long run, and it's judged right now at least that Culp can handle the new students without an overcrowding situation, and it relieves the burden that we have currently at Bridle Path.
Okay.
Just one more thing. We're examining the entire facilities aspects of the school district in terms of our alternatives when we vote next month on the new high school or an expanded high school or whatever plan is adopted. We'll include what we plan to do with the other facilities. And that being if we need another grade realignment or whatever the board decides at that point, we'll include obviously what the fallout will be for the elementary schools and the middle schools.
I guess my concern is just that this transfer is just kind of a quick fix of this looks like it's going to suit the numbers for now or maybe a year or 2 to come, but are they looking at the numbers enough into the future that if A.M. Culp only has 3 extra rooms now, they're filling them next year by making this transfer. So they'll be filled to their capacity.
And as you know, we have no way of knowing from year to year why or what the demographics will be within each district or within each school. And that's the reason we have a problem at Bridle Path right now. It was never envisioned that we'd get to 730 in 1 year. It was expected that we would only have 650 there, and we had an 80 increase of what we had expected. It's a domino effect, obviously, when more people move into an area. As you are aware, I don't know if you were here during the realignment of the elementary schools when we went through that excruciatingly brutal process to try to do that because we couldn't please everyone in the situation. We tried to align it what's best for the entire district, and it worked 12 out of 13 areas. It just one grew faster than we had anticipated, and that's what's causing this problem.
And I think if they would look at those mistakes and those errors, maybe they could realize that what they need to do is leave extra room in all the schools for anticipated overflow. If they would build more modulars onto NAP and leave 2 or 3 extra rooms that would handle the overflow that may happen, instead of filling them, all of the elementary schools to their capacity, and only building 2 new elementary schools when really 3 were needed, it was really just an issue of saving money instead of doing what needed to be done. And I feel like that's what's happening now. The children are being looked at as figures on a sheet of paper instead of how it affects them, emotionally and academically. Their grades are suffering as they're trying to readjust through all these different changes. And my son's gone through 2 already, so I would just hope they would look at all alternatives and try to leave more room in the schools so that these overcrowding, situations don't occur so often.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Patty Hyder, live in Springdale Lane in Lansdale. I just want to say I don't support bringing this to a referendum. I believe you should make the decision. I believe this theory that people will go into the voting booth and just vote against a rise in taxes. They'll say, do you want to spend $42 million on a new high school? They'll say, I don't think they'll get to the new high school part. They'll just go, no, $42 million, no. And I don't think that's fair to our children. I think we need people who understand what's going on. I also think that we need to look at how we're going to start to exceed capacity in 1996. I don't think it's fair, some people, Mr. Graziano, no disrespect to you, but to use these low-range PEL numbers to say we're going to start. We're also using the mid to upper range. And
could you confine your comments or
I know.
Your comments just to the
No, I'm just saying that we are going to start to exceed capacity. We need to bring this to a vote so we can get this building built. No matter which building we're building, we need to start building it. And since we're all talking about our dads, my dad was a 30-year career Navy officer, and he spent 20 years on the board in the township we lived in, and he always believed in education. Everything he fought for, everything he did was about education. Thank you.
Mrs. Krager.
Good evening, Sharice Krieger from Montgomery Township. I find it kind of laughable tonight as I sit in the audience and watch everybody come up here again who does not support the referendum, carrying task force books and papers piled this high. And I don't doubt that they have read the paperwork that they bring here tonight. However, they failed to miss the very recommendation that task force made to the board that when they came forward with their recommendation, and that was a recommendation for a 2,000-student high school. The task force recommended for a comprehensive, equal high school of 2,000 students to be built in Montgomery Township. And in the 11th hour, in October of '93, Dr. Elko pulled out a smaller alternative, the 1,200-student facility that was submitted in Plan Con A to Harrisburg last month. I would like to bring a couple of things to the board's attention on why I support referendum. I am totally confused by the number of times the PEL numbers have changed, by the number of times the facility itself has changed. Case in point. In April of 1993, a facilities report was given to the board by Dr. Elko. In the facilities report, the smaller 1,200-student high school only called for 186,000 square feet. It was at a price of $34,630,000. And it included the pool, a stadium, and a track. Now, when the Plan Con, when we all picked up our Plan Cons, I'm sure they've all picked up their Plan Cons too, this high school that the application was made on is for 237,000 square feet at a price of $41,000 and some change. 41 million, excuse me, it's late. It has an auditorium, but it doesn't have a stadium or a track. I guess we'll have to go out for a further bond to get those facilities then. When you look at the issues surrounding curriculum and how the curriculum is being streamlined, when you look at the situation with this AIM project integrating tech prep, and you see the reduction in classroom space, you begin to wonder, what kind of facility are we getting? We know it's not an equal comprehensive facility. That was the 2,000 student one. But yet everybody gets up here tonight and says, you have all the information. I know you don't have all the information. We don't even know what the final figure is going to be on whatever kind of facility we're going to get. There's no excuse for that. In 27 states in this nation, the voter has the right to referendum any time a municipality wants to build a new facility or increase taxes. Mr. Bowman, you came from a state that does the very same thing. So did I.
Ma'am, I came from Pennsylvania.
I thought you moved here from California, Mr. Bowman.
No, I was born in Pennsylvania, and I've lived in 8 states in this country.
Did you come from California?
Across the world.
When you moved here, did you come from
No, I did not.
All right.
Never been in
Yes, he has. Yes, he has.
Would you rather be in California?
Yes, he has. He most certainly has too.
Would I move back there in a heartbeat after tonight? Yes. Okay, Sharice, your 3 is up. Okay.
I just want to close, Mr. Bowman, with saying I support voter referendum because it will force this district and anybody who supports the idea for a second high school to get out there, pound the pavement, and push your cause if you want it to pass. It will force accountability from the administrators, from the board members who support it. Absolutely it will. That's what referendum calls for. I support the referendum wholeheartedly, and I hope that you do too.
Is there anyone else?
Let's vote.
Are they waiting for the vote?
Yeah, we have to be here.
Yeah, Sharice, here she comes.
Hey.
My name is Ellen Janke. I live in Lansdale. I'm going to speak on the referendum. I'm asking you to take a close look at the situation. Montgomery Township is doing a mid-decade census because of the inadequacies of the 1990 census. We're not the only ones being affected by the increased population in this area. The private schools are also filling up. St. Stan's is already at capacity and LC is almost there. As we know, we could very well have used another elementary school, as people have said, and at that time the vote for Walton Farm was not unanimous, and we do need it. Also, the second high school maybe could help alleviate the overcrowding if you could possibly make it a 9-12 building and return the 6th grade to middle schools. Increasing class size is not the answer. The student population does not fit into neat little packages where you say, let's add 3 students to each class. That is just not realistic. We need to make a decision now. Let's move this district into the future. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Kathleen Malfi from Upper Gwynedd. I'll just make this very short. I'm against the referendum, totally. You wouldn't let binding or non-binding arbitration, any kind of arbitration, go into place during the strike. You said you were elected to decide these issues, and everyone went along with that, and nothing's been solved yet. You said that it was your responsibility. This issue is also your responsibility. Please don't pass the buck. You were voted in, and this is your job. And if no one has the information, why should anyone vote on it? Thank you.
Thank you. With seeing no one else in line. Oh. Okay, last one. Then we're moving on. Everybody's had a chance.
Good evening, members of the school board and Mr. Bowman. My name is Sandy Core, and I reside in Upper Gwynedd Township. I'm to be the proud mother of a daughter which is, fortunately, a student in the North Penn School District. I usually come with several of my friends. Unfortunately, they decided not to come with me tonight because through the actions of a few members on our school board, they don't feel like they have any say or don't want to be heard, or they're not heard. Tonight, one of the school board members adamantly denied that anything about referendum and them were true. and we're going to leave that be. But one of the reasons why I just wanted to question anybody on the board that's against referendum, I want to know what you're hiding. I want to know, could it be that you don't consider the community educated enough or bright enough to understand the complexities of this issue? Some people have stated in the audience that it's the board's responsibility. They feel that you're intelligent enough to make these decisions. Well, I, for one, am not so sure that I'm confident in some of the members on the school board. I didn't like what you did redistricting these kids. A couple parents up here had said they don't like their kids being changed twice. One of the women said 3 times. I mean, you keep playing around with these kids, you don't know where you want them. Okay, and I think that I'm going to go ahead and trust you when at least one of you are not going to run in 4 more months. No, I'm not going to trust you with $40+ million. Okay. Let's see here. Okay, we the parents are ultimately the ones that are going to be stuck holding the bill for this. It's going to be the quality of our children's education that's going to be impacted by the educational and financial consequences of your actions long after you have left the board. And I'd like to thank at least 2 of you for deciding not to run. It will make my decision a lot easier. I support the right for all voters to cast their votes after a thorough examination of all the facts pertaining to this facility. If there's facts out there that any of us are not aware of, I think it's this board's responsibility to make this public aware of everything that has to do with this facility. I want to know what you're planning on teaching there. I want to know the curriculum. I want to know what kind of fields you're going to have, how you're planning on accommodating the marching band, and everything else. We should be just as educated about this as you are because we're the one paying for it. To summarize, we need the referendum because many people affected by this change are not going to come up here, stand in front of you, and waste their time, which is what a lot of people have been telling me. Well, I mean, I've seen it up here a couple times. People come up here, start talking to you, and next thing you know, a couple of you are like conversing amongst yourself. Well, yeah, you're really paying attention to what that person's saying. The only way that they're going to get their voice heard is to go to a referendum, and they can cast the vote. And at least one of you, I'd like to tell you, voting really isn't that difficult. We've done it many, many times. If they know how to vote for a president, they can go ahead and vote for a referendum. To do anything less than to put this up for a referendum is to insult my political integrity. And for those of you who choose not to support the referendum tonight, I brought along some lollipops, and you're more than welcome to the suckers.
Last one.
I wasn't going to stand up here, but I need a lollipop.
State your name, sir.
I'm William Taylor. I live in Lansdale. You've been talking dollars and time. I think time is much more valuable than dollars are. It's not the taxpayers or anybody else who pays for this. It's the kids who are going to be in the projects, whatever they are, who pay the costs, really, and who pay us back if we do it right. I have a question for the board. I don't know how you're going to answer it, but let's presume that the referendum is put on the ballot, which will be in November or in May. Either one. Will the board members then, all of you, work just as hard in that period of time as you would have if it weren't put on the ballot? Because without the referendum coming in, you will not have any more certainty than you have now. Or will it be a waffling device? Will you work very hard for the new program, whatever it's going to be? Maybe you're going to put earphones on all the kids and run them loose in the street. Are you going to work hard, or is this a dodge? And how do we answer the question? I don't know if you can answer it, but I'm worried about it.
Thanks, Mr. Taylor. Okay, with that, we'll move on to the business part of the report. There'll be an opportunity for another audience of citizens at the end of the meeting. I was remiss in recommending approval of the minutes of the 690th meeting that we had at the very beginning. Is there a motion to that effect?
So
moved by Redcam. Is there a second? Second. Second by Allen. Any questions? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Dr. Persing, Superintendent's report.
You have before you a resolution which recommends that the 1990 bond series to effectuate the payback of $25 million for the Mass General Fund, and I so recommend.
So moved by Reckham, second by Prokowski. Any questions? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed?
You have your second recommendation for a resolution for 1992 bond series to help effectuate the payment of the $25 million Mass General Fund. I so recommend.
So moved.
Second. Moved by Mangle, second by Reckham. Any questions?
One question, should we be putting in the amount, Dennis, in the motion?
No.
So that it doesn't look confusing, like $50 million to someone if they read it this
All
way?
you need, Mr. Sherr, is the fact that you're going to do it in the resolution.
Okay, that's okay then.
The resolution that's attached to the minutes will include the actual amounts because we are approving this.
Okay, it'll be attached? Okay,
Otherwise, we'd
fine.
have to read the entire.
I don't want anyone confused that we've just exchanged
If you
50
single
million.
out the amount, then you also have to single out the terms and conditions in the resolution.
Okay.
Any other questions? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
You have in front of you a recommend for the approval of waiver of tuition status for a student whose name is on file in the Office of Special Education and Student Services in accordance with your own board policy of number 5118. I so recommend.
So moved. Second.
Moved by Allen, second by Whites. Any questions? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
We had discussed before, and the person is serving, Mr. Allerb, is interim elementary principal at $300 a day, and I so recommend.
So moved. Second.
Moved by Reckham, second by Whites. Just to clarify, that is at Montgomery Elementary.
Montgomery Elementary.
Any other questions? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
You have in front of you and has had sufficient discussion to recommend a flashing signal be placed in front of the high school, and I so recommend.
Is it a question?
Yeah, let's just get a move in a second first. Is there, who moved?
For the study.
Yeah. Wait, let's get a motion. We have a motion. Moved by Prokowski, second by
Second.
by Shear. Now, are there any questions?
Yes. I have a question. I think it was the same one Terry had. We are just approving McMahon to do the traffic study to see if we can get a flashing light at this stage. Is that
That is correct, right,
Okay.
Mr. Wood?
That is correct.
Okay, Dr. or Wood, the $4,300 is not an exorbitant amount of money, but is there any possibility of sharing that cost? I mean, given the fact that we could use a 15-mile-per-hour school zone flashing signal up there, there are other people that will be benefactors, Calvary Baptist, the shopping center, et cetera, et cetera.
Calvary does not have walking students for pedestrian traffic, so they have no desire to participate. And one of our signals will be in Upper Gwinnett, the other will be in Tollemenson, and it is always our initiative to come forth and do all the traffic studies and make the application. The application will go through Tollemenson Township. And after we then get the bid documents and bid the signals, once they're installed, the municipality does maintain them.
Okay. So there's nobody to share the cost with us?
No one to share the cost.
Okay, fine.
But the bottom line is the reason we have to get the study done is to get the PennDOT approval. And unfortunately, we have to live with it. Any other questions? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
You have had discussion on the realignment set forth in the map to send students into AM Culp. I so recommend.
Second.
Moved by Clemens, second by Reckamp. Any questions? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
We recommend that you accept the following gifts for the student. The school is Culp, the donor is Vincenzo's company, or family, excuse me. Gifts are books, amount of $75. I so recommend.
So moved.
Moved by Allen, second by Shear. Any comments or questions? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Under personnel, you have a list of recommendations for personnel. I would recommend that they be taken in one motion unless any board member would like to speak to the exception.
Through which area?
You want to go through professional first and then just...
Yes.
All professional?
Yes,
Start with
the professional.
I would prefer to be itemized.
No, professional?
You want the
Each individual.
on the professional ones itemized? Okay. Would you make a motion then for...
If I could.
Let's get it qualified, Tom. Do you want everyone in the professional one itemized or just some other group itemized?
Just in the professional, which
Okay.
goes down to Michael Wilson.
Okay, fine. Let's, then Dr. Persing, would you...
Then we will go item by item. Sandra Daly.
So moved. So moved. Moved by Reckamp, second by Allen. Any questions on Sandra Daly? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed?
Tina Graff.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Allen, second by Shear. Any questions on Tina Graff? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
Sandra Cope.
So moved. Second. Moved and seconded. Any questions? Sandra Cope. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
John Cotran.
So moved. Second. Moved by Allen, second by Reckamp. Any questions? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed?
Nay.
Motion carries.
Lynn Smith.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Allen, second by Mingle. Any questions? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
Michael Wilson.
So moved. Moved by Allen, second by Whites. Any questions? All those in favor? Aye. Nay. All those opposed say nay. Motion carries.
I will now say that the support staff would recommend that all of the support staff be considered under one motion unless there is an exception by a board member.
So moved.
Moved by Shear, second by Reckamp. Any questions? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
You have also a request for a leave of absence for your professional personnel. I would recommend that you consider those in one motion unless there is an exception.
I think we need to go to the resignation first.
Yep, can do.
Can you just keep in order? Are we in order?
Yeah.
Okay. I think the first one was nomination of support staff. Now we're under resignations under personnel.
Resignation. You have before you a group of resignations. I so move. Excuse me, I recommend. What time is it?
So moved.
Moved by Mingle, second by Reckamp for resignations listed in item H2. Any questions? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
I believe the next piece would be on salary changes. I would so recommend.
So moved. Second by White, second by Reckamp. Any questions? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
Under H would be request for leave of absence. I would so recommend.
So moved. Moved by Reckamp, second by Mingle. Any questions? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
You have before you a recommended approval of additions to the professional and support staff substitute list. I would so recommend.
So moved. Moved by Reckamp, second by Allen. Any questions?
Objection. I'd like professional staff voted separately and support staff broken down, please.
Okay, you have in front of you a recommendation, then, that we do this, and so we will break down the professional item BA8. Is that what you're recommending?
No. Dr. Persing, you can do professional in one motion. I'd like support staff individual.
Okay, I would recommend the professional staff to be considered.
Second by Shear, second by Mingle. Any questions? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
Okay, there are support staff substitute lists for 94, 95. is item BA8. Define those.
You want to do each one of those
Want
individually?
those individually?
Yes, please.
Okay, we have those. I believe first one would be Tony Heffley.
So moved.
Second. Moved by Allen, second by Reckcamp. Any questions? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion
Mr.
carries.
Bowman, I have a conflict of interest.
On which one?
Tony Heffel,
Okay. One
Abstain.
abstention.
please.
Next one.
Lisa Kramer.
So moved. Second.
Moved by Allen, second by Whites. Any questions? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
Ellen Janke.
So moved. Second.
Moved by Allen, second by Whites. Any questions? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
We have a roll call vote, please.
Mr. Allen?
Yes.
Mr. Clemens?
No.
Ms. Mingle?
No.
Ms. Bukowski?
No.
Mr. Reckcamp?
Yes.
Mrs. Scher?
No.
Mr. Whites?
Yes.
Mr. Bowman?
Yes.
I have 4 yes votes and 4 no votes.
So the motion does not carry. Next one.
Harry Crum.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Allen, second by Perkowski. All those in favor say, any questions? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Okay, number 7, we have recommended approval of changes, additions, deletions to extra duty assignments for the 94-95 school year. I so recommend.
So moved.
Moved by Allen, second by, hello?
I'll second.
Thank you. Somebody needs to. Jeez. It's been moved and seconded. Are there any questions? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
You have before you recommended student travel. Unless you wish to vote on any one separately, I would recommend that all be approved under one motion.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Mingle, second by Allen. Any questions? Yes.
In the green sheet on the senior class trip, it said that the chaperone ratio is not being adhered to. Is this because of the containment
Yes.
of the group?
May I answer that question? Yes. They're all on one boat, and they've done this in '93, and they don't feel they have to have that 15-to-1 ratio.
Are they stopping and going shopping in New York itself? Are they going on the boat and off the boat and that's it?
I have their schedule, if I can just take a minute to find it.
That was in the schedule here.
Right?
Yeah, but the itemized schedule's on the green sheet.
It's in the
Last page of the packet.
Yes, they go from homeroom to the cafeteria, to the bus, to the seaport, to the cruise ship, and then they return to the bus and come home.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Same trip as 2 years ago?
Yes, '93.
Any other questions? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
I would recommend the approval of the expulsion of the student whose name is on file in the office of the superintendent for 20 days, effective February 14th, 1995.
So moved.
Moved by Perkowski, second by Clements. All those, any questions? And to remind those that were not at the hearing, the board members cannot vote, so they need to abstain. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. You note that abstentions from Mrs. Mendel, Mr. Bowman, and Mrs. Shear. Were you not there also?
Yes, I am. I'm sorry.
3 abstentions.
My statement should read not only, I will sign not only was I not there, but I also have a conflict of interest with the family.
Okay, vandalism report just for...
Vandalism report we have, and that should be distributed. If you have any questions, I'm sure Mr. Wood will be able to answer. That would conclude, unless there are questions, that would conclude my report.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Person. Next item on the agenda is other business, and we have a motion that's been tabled that's on the floor that directs the solicitor to seek the necessary things that we need to do to get on a question on the May ballot.
I think it should be more specific than that. It should be specific that file a petition for placing the question on the referendum.
Well, the motion has already been made, and I was just trying to summarize that. Do we need it read back to
Mrs. Hatfield has it in copy, if she would.
Donna Mangle made the motion that the solicitor be directed to prepare and take all steps necessary to place an appropriately worded referendum question on the ballot of the May 1995 preliminary election to determine whether the voters favor or oppose constructing a second high school in the North Penn School District.
Thank you, Mrs. Hatfield.
Thank you. Is there any questions or comment regarding that still?
Just a comment, Mr. Bowman, that I think what needs to be understood and clarified for those who may not understand the purpose of a non-binding referendum is that it does not, we are not shirking our responsibility, we would be exercising it. A non-binding referendum would give us information that we could deliberate on, and this board, 9 members of this board, would vote regardless of the outcome of that referendum. So the freedom to still vote as you wish would be there. But there is no shirking of responsibility. A vote would be had.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments?
Yes, could we restate exactly what the motion is again? Sure I have.
Donna Mangle made a motion that the solicitor be directed to prepare and take all steps necessary to place an appropriately worded referendum question on the ballot of the May 1995 primary election to determine whether the voters favor or oppose constructing a second high school in the North Penn School District.
Okay. Great.
I guess I have a comment. I said something last time it was commented on here. This decision was made almost 2 years ago, a decision to build. I don't think that the real issue is, are we going to build or not build? It's what we're going to build.
Right.
We had picked one a year and a half, 2 years ago. Since then, we've delayed it, we've deferred it, we've restudied it, we've revisited it. We're about to do that again. And having been through the exercise with Bridle Path and the other elementary schools, there is a land development process that takes time. There's two things. If we put it off till May, we're at risk of losing the time when we need the building open if we do anything where it's new construction. That's my belief that would happen. It's also my belief that if we keep over the last year and a half, we've done nothing but delay and defer and put roadblocks in front of this thing. It's going to end up costing us another $500,000 or more to get a construction manager if we keep this up. If we wait until May, and if we're not confident enough to make a decision, we're going to have the facts by next month, and the reconsideration, I believe that we're putting it off, we're not doing our job, and that we're putting the completion of the building and time at risk, and I believe that we're also putting at risk additional costs because of a construction manager so we can maybe get it done in time. I think we need to do our job.
Mr. Bowman, another need for clarification. I don't see us sitting here and waiting for a May primary. I have no intentions whatsoever to sit back with my feet up, nor do I wish to see any administrators in the same position. We have financials that are needed. We need a curriculum, an understanding of what curriculum and the studies that will be in a proposed second high school. There are a million questions yet to go answered for not only the board members but the public. So there is plenty to do between now and May. I don't see a stall. Well, first of all, the minority of the board can't stall anybody. But there is no reason for time to be considered dead, waiting for the results of a referendum. Things could still move on. Nothing is precluded from happening.
Okay. Time to vote. All those in favor say aye.
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 All those opposed say nay.
Nay.
We have a roll call vote, Mr. Weir, please.
The question is, will the referendum be placed on a ballot? Mr. Allen?
No.
Mr. Clemens?
Yes.
Ms. Mengel?
Yes.
Ms. Prokowski?
Yes.
Mr. Reckcamp?
No.
Mrs. Scher?
Yes.
Mr. Weitz?
No.
Mr. Bowman?
No.
So I have 4 voting yes and 4 voting no.
Motion does not carry. Could we have the treasurer's report, Mr. Kelly, please?
Yes, Mr. Bowman. For the month of January 1995, we had cash receipts in the amount of $2,175,396.61. Receipts year-to-date, $82,058,180.41. Disbursements for the month, $6,669,025.60. Receipts or disbursements year-to-date, $46,486,505.11. We currently have term investments in the amount of $9 million and temporary investments in the amount of $30,443,397.
Thank you, Mr. Kelly. Any questions of Dennis? Thank you. Now we need to sanction and approval of the invoices from the general fund.
I recommend approval of the disbursements for the month of January in the amount of $6,353,916.39 and approval of the disbursements for the month of February in the amount of $808,262.95.
Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Mengel, second by Shear. Any questions? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Food Services Report. Mr. Hartenstein.
During the month of January, the Food Service Department had income in the amount of $369,849.61. Raw food costs of $157,163.16. The total operating costs of $120,038.82. For a profit during the month of January of $92,647.53, which cuts the year-to-date deficit down to $8,828.
Great. Any questions of Mr. Hartenstein? Any questions of Mr. Hartenstein on the Food Services Report? For those of you who are unaware, this is Mr. Hartenstein's last official meeting, and we want to thank him for all of his good work and many, many years of service to the North Bend School District, and wish him well in his new endeavors in Allentown.
Thank you.
Good luck, Bill. And we know where you live if we don't get that food budget back up to into the black by the end of the year. Thanks again, Bill. Federal programs, Dr. Bites.
President, no report.
Thank you. Solicitor's report. Charles, anything else to add? Thank you.
No additional.
We'll now entertain a second audience of citizens where you may speak on any item associated with the district. Once again, you are limited to 3 minutes, and please state your name, the item that you want to talk about. And due to the lateness of the hour, I'm going to cut this off at 11:45, so please line up, and the first, whoever gets it in by 11:45 will get to speak. Okay, sir?
My name is John Fisher, 1453 Cathy's Lane, North Wales, Pennsylvania. And first of all, I want to thank Mr. Allen, Mr. Weitz, Mr. Reckcamp, and Mr. Bowman for voting against the referendum. I feel that there's a solution to our problem that will not require a referendum, and that's what I'm going to speak to tonight. And it's a unique opportunity I think I have tonight to see that we can bring the board together again. I've given each one of you a copy of the text of the speech I'm about ready to speak from. I have already handed this to the reporter, and it probably will be published in the next few days in the editorial column. Penmont Plan update. Much stir is in the air about the Penmont Plan. What is it? It is an alternative to the second high school, created to provide equal opportunities for all students, to unite warring factions in the North Penn District, and to save taxpayers' money.
Excuse me, Mr. Fisher, for just a second. The folks out there, please move your comments and your yes, thank you. Thank you very much, sir. Okay, please.
Thank you, Mr. Bowman. I accomplished this goal that I have just set forth by having us build a middle school in Montgomery Township and making great adjustments to make middle school 6 through 8 and a 2-campus comprehensive high school to include grades 9 through 12. And at your convenience, you will see a diagram in your folder which can help you see this more clearly. It was reported in an article of the Reporter of January 17th, Resident Plans for Saving Money, that, I quote, administrators shot holes in his plan in reference to the North Penn solution called the Penmont Plan. In a full meeting with former Superintendent Alan Elko and other top administrative and school board representatives, I argued for my plan until it became clear to me that what I was saying was in personal opposition to my superiors' personal agendas. In fairness, Dr. Elko summed up our intense dialogue with this statement, and I quote, "Your plan could be made to work. It could save money, but it's not altogether educationally sound." My editorial of January 21st, which appeared in the paper about the Penmont Plan, was put on hold because of these objections and my belief that Dr. Elko could sell his small second high school proposal to the board and to the community. He failed. And I'm of the belief that every objective that he put forward could be overcome. Our tax-paying citizens, who are, directly and indirectly all of us, must come together to support public high school education, knowing that its constitutional purpose is to promote the general welfare and provide for the common defense. High schools protect our community against unemployed and unemployable youth. Our youth look to us for guidance as we educate them to take our places in the future. Creative compromise on this sensitive issue will send them a message which will affect our community far into the next century. Now, some people in our community...
Mr. Fisher, you get only 3 minutes, so you
well, I didn't take all of them the first time.
Well, it doesn't matter.
It's not cumulative.
You get 3 minutes each time, that's it.
How much do I have to summarize?
You have a minute.
Okay. In 1 minute, I will summarize. It seems that some people think we have no problem. The figures that I put in my report, I believe, show that we do have a problem, and I think most of the board members will agree at this point that we need to build. Now, what we need to build is the question. Should we build a 1,200 student capacity high school as Dr. Elko had planned, or should we build a middle school? And I put this new twist to my Penmont plan, a middle school which could be retrofitted in the future. Should the need arise, and should the figures really support it, and should we have unanimity in our community and our board in the future that we change this to a high school? It is possible to build a middle school 6 through 8 on that tract out on Keenest Road. And as I said in my earlier statements, if we have a plan for expansion and a footprint that will be part of a comprehensive plan for the school to grow as the population grows, we can save, as my figures show, up to $31 million, and we can bring us all together. I now end, with all this in mind, a vote for the Penmont Plan could unite our divided school board. Those who oppose the second high school win. Those who plan for a second high school win, only thinking when it is necessary toward the future. But most importantly, the citizens, the taxpayers, the parents, the teachers, and the students of North Penn District win because they will all face the problem of growth united. Thank you.
Hello, I'm still Lynn Janoff of Lansdale. And the other matter that I wish to address is with our high school options. Lately, it seems to have come down to either we build a second high school or we expand the existing one. I would like to remind the board and the public that out of 21 task force members, 18 voted for a second high school, 2 voted for multi-track year-round education, and 1 voted for converting the junior high into a second high school. But not 1 member voted in favor of expanding the present high school. It is mind-boggling to me that you can even consider expansion of the existing high school as a viable option. In my opinion, a high school with 3,400 students is totally unacceptable. Do you realize that out of the 92 colleges and universities in Pennsylvania, only 26 of them have student bodies numbering over 3,400? Not only will we be one of the largest, if not the largest, high school in our state, but we would be larger than 72% of the colleges and universities in Pennsylvania. A major concern of mine is where we will find highly qualified administrators to work in a school this size. If given the choice between earning a certain salary supervising 2,000 teenagers and an equal salary supervising 3,400 teenagers, which would you choose? We hear a lot about the hidden costs of a second high school. I believe there are many hidden costs in expansion, but none so costly as the cost to our young people. You cannot put 3,400 teenagers in one building and expect to furnish them with a quality education. Proper supervision and crowd control would be the best you could hope for. Our children deserve better than this. Our community deserves better than this. I implore you, members of the board, kind of fits in with my last little speech, but you make the decision, and please make the right one. Thank you for your time.
Thanks.
Bob Graziano from Tolminson, and I have a hodgepodge of things here to talk about, unfortunately. I have read the task force report. Unfortunately, I got the public version, which is a heck of a lot thinner than the private version. You should do what it takes to bring consensus. A previous board tried that by engaging a task force. The facts are that some of the key guidelines used by that task force 3 years ago are no longer valid, the most important being the enrollment numbers. The November 91 PEL showed that the capacity should have been exceeded this year. We know that's not going to happen. Also, the second high school proposed was a 2,000-student school, 9 through 12, not 10 through 12, and equal to the present school, and had a requirement of equal curriculum. Now, the enrollment numbers alone have already changed the size and configuration of the school from what the task force considered. The latest PEL study shows even more decrease in growth. The task force said in its report that, and I quote, its members believe that the community would not accept a situation where one high school is perceived as inferior to the other. This is still true. The change to two radically different sized schools almost guarantees not only the perception, but the reality of inequality and reduced opportunity. Because many of the changes taken place since the original high school task force, I would suggest, and here come the groans, that this board would consider appointing a task force to compile the issues related to 1, building a 1,200 student high school, 2, expanding the current high school, 3, utilizing the Leeds and Northwood facility, and 4, the Penmont plan. We're not breaking a lot of new ground here, no pun intended, so this should not take very long. Now, one issue not discussed much is educational opportunity and academic quality. Almost every year, you cancel low enrollment courses, even though many of them are advanced levels, important to those going to college. The larger the student body, the better chance that enrollments are above the minimum, and more of these courses can be run, offering increased opportunity and greater flexibility. If the students are split into 2 schools, there will be an even greater chance than exists now that singleton courses will not run, and there will be less opportunity, less flexibility in course selection. Our children lose, especially those in the smaller school. The task force claimed that this should not happen, but this is when the schools were of equal size, and I quote, both schools would still be drawing from student populations 2,000 or more. Another statement no longer true. Can 2 schools of vastly unequal size offer equal curriculum and equal educational opportunity? Not very likely. Now, in closing, I'd just like to say that if a second school ever gets built, I'm glad that I live near the present bigger school, because my kids who are in the class of 2003 and 2004, I believe, will get a greater educational opportunity than if they were in the smaller school. And that's important to me, not the football team or the marching knights or anything like that. It's their education. Now, just a couple of small items. If the 1990 census was so low, why has each PEL study shown a reduced enrollment? I don't think that's an argument at all. Also, one more thing, Mr. Bowman, I was very disturbed by the fact that Mrs. Mingle said that she only got Mr. Potash's facts today when he says it was sent last Friday. I think it would behoove you as the president of this board to task someone to find out why that happened. I think you owe it to her and the rest of this community. Thank you.
I think the current school has the capacity to handle the PEL projected maximum number of students that they've projected using their mid-range projection. And I want to just document that. The current school, the Plan Con says it has 2,814 capacity, but it's got let me see here. It's got 60 classrooms with 850 square feet that can hold 35 students. Desk, I've seen it. They got another 17 classrooms with 770 square feet, which is appropriate for 30 students. If you multiply those numbers together, you got 60 classrooms that can hold 10 more students than the stated capacity in the Plan Con. That's 600 students. And then you add in 17 classrooms of 770 square feet that can hold an extra 5. That's another 85 students. That's a total of 685 students. Now, if you add that to the 2,814 that the Plan Con says, the actual capacity of the building is 3,599. In addition to that, you do not use the auditorium as a study hall. You use classrooms as study hall. You can, and when I count the number of students and the number of periods and all of that, I estimate that you've got at least 10 classrooms per period that are used for study halls. If you put these swing-up desktop things in the auditorium on the chairs, either by adding them or replacing the chairs, that's a lot cheaper than building another building. And if you did that, you would probably free up at least 10 classrooms which have a capacity of 35 students. That's 350 students just by moving the study halls into the auditorium. That gives a total capacity of 3,949 students. Okay. Now let's take PEL. They have projected. They projected through 2004. I took their formula and applied it to the 2004 data, and that works out to a projection of 3,425.
Okay, Mr. Bailey, that's.
I just finished. 3,425 is their maximum projected number of students. Of those, roughly 7% would be in the VOTEC building, not in the high school building, so that means the occupancy for the high school building would be 3,186, which compares to a capacity of 3,949. If you take that 3,949, you multiply by the 90%, 90% to give you functional capacity, that still brings you down to 3,554, which is 350 students more than the maximum projected by PEL. I say maximum, I'm talking their mid-range projection.
Okay, Mr. Bailey, your time is up. I ask you to summarize. Okay. Sit down, please.
So my summary is you can handle the projected student load with what you have.
Yes, ma'am. You're next.
Hi, I have a question.
Would you say
I'm sorry, Mary Waslenko from Montgomery Township. Many of the hirings and the additions to the salary and the payroll that were handled tonight were handled very swiftly and smoothly. Everything went pretty much along. Everyone was hired, or the changes were initiated that needed to be done, with the exception of one individual. When the count was taken, there were some very passionate nays. And I'm speaking about the individual, Ellen Janke, on support staff. I don't know Ellen, but just as an observer in the audience, I was curious as to why the board, out of all of these additions and changes to the payroll, would not approve this one. Can you answer that?
Well, it's not really time for debate or for questions.
Well, I guess my comment is that it seemed less business and more personal, because it was one individual out of looks like hundreds.
And that's an observation that you can make from that. But the audience of citizens is not a time where we respond to those kind of questions.
When would be an appropriate time?
Through a letter to the board.
Very good. Thank you very much.
Personnel matter. It's a personnel matter.
Hi, my name's Jeff Hollis from Lansdale. I wanted to start off by apologizing for comments I made earlier to Mr. Bowman. They were out of place and out of line, and I regret saying that. So I'm sorry. I also regret starting a trend this evening of a lot of disparaging comments being made from the audience. And unfortunately, the majority of the people making those comments aren't here to enjoy this new trend.
We'll enjoy it.
I do have a question about a front page article that was in the Reporter, I believe it was February 2nd, about standardized test results. And according to the graphs on the front page of the Reporter, 50% of our students fall below the 25th percentile in these national standardized tests. And I'm wondering if nobody read this, or if there was a mistake by the reporter, or
Scott's not here. But normally, we don't respond to this. I mean, what I can have you do is get with Dr. Fike afterwards, and he can explain.
Well, I think my question is more to the point of if this is accurate or not. If it's not accurate, why hasn't something been said in the Reporter about it? If it is accurate, why hasn't the board addressed this?
We did discuss this last Tuesday and got the full report during the meeting on it in terms of the small part, and here I am responding, which we're not supposed to, that's not part of the audience of citizens. But we did discuss it. It's part of the record, and like I said, Dr. Fike will be glad to meet with you afterwards and explain that.
Okay, great.
Yes, ma'am.
Hi, my name is Kathleen Malfi from Upper Gwynedd. I've been really upset tonight listening to not any board members, because you've all been fine, but sitting in the audience, I have a headache because the people behind me would not be quiet. There was a child here who was 12 years old who came to watch and observe, who's I've heard has gotten up to talk before, and I heard behind me swearing, disparaging remarks about people on the board, about Mr. Potash, and I'm sorry, but I am really sickened by it. We are supposed to be a community. There's no reason why we all have to agree on everything. Everyone has different opinions. But not to be able to sit and listen to someone else's opinion without yelling or making nasty remarks or stupid sounds is really sickening. I'm sorry, but that's not part of why we're here. This is supposed to be a business meeting. We're supposed to sit and listen, and if we have an opinion, get up here and state it.
Would you please be quiet while she's speaking? Thank you very much.
And I'm just very upset that any of this has been going on. I could not hear all the time when somebody was up here talking. Not that I agreed with everyone, I certainly didn't. I don't agree with lots of people's opinions, but everyone has something to offer. Whether it's opinion or fact, we can stand here and listen to it. And I just think it needs to be said that everyone should sit and listen while someone else is talking. The other thing I want to say is that everyone in this community should come together to ensure a good education for all the children who live here, whatever that means. I personally would like to see a second high school. I wish that the high school that the task force had recommended was going to be built, but it is obviously not going to be built, and I'd like to see some building built. I saw an interesting comment in the sound-off column about maybe making the smaller school into 9th and 10th and the other school into 11th and 12th, but I've heard from teachers and people that that's not a good idea academically. But there are lots of ideas, and why we can't stand here and listen to them, I don't know. And the last thing I have to say is that, Mr. Hartenstein, I'm sorry to see you go because you're a pleasant face to see up here every day. Bye-bye.
So there. Thank you. That's the way I think of it.
My name's Eileen McMullen. I'm from Lansdale.
I have really a question. I wanted to know if, besides the Pell study, which is not going to go far enough to really do you any good with your decision on the high school, is there any longer acting studies been done, enrollments, like the year 2020? Are we going to have a white elephant on our hands in that year because we've had this surge go through, and then we're going to find a declining enrollment afterwards? Has there been anything put into that?
Again, this is not really part of the comment period. The fact is that when the PEL presented it, they presented a 10-year projection, which they've said in the past, even though it's only 10 years, it's the best they can do. If they do go beyond that, then it becomes even more nebulous out as to whether it really is going to happen or not.
My question is only because I've lived here all my life, and in the 70s, we had this big surge go through, and then we sold off a lot of school buildings. And I think that's a lot of the concern about building a new high school. And I think if we had more information on that, it would probably help a lot to the community's decision on how they felt about this. I know either way that we go, we're going to have to accept it. And I think, it wouldn't hurt to make it a little bit easier, on each group, because it seems that we have two warring factions here, And, I think we can come together in the middle once it's all said and done. But I think, we can make it a little easier for everybody to swallow with the right information.
Okay, Bill, you got 3 minutes.
Thank you. I realize how close I'm cutting it. Bill Roman, Upper Gwinnett Township. A close examination of the PEL 1994 mid-range projections made through the year 2004 indicates that the real peak of North Penn's high school's enrollment will occur in the year 2005, after which enrollment begins a slow descent. In 2005, projected student enrollment is approximately 3,425. And subtracting a student capacity of 2,814, one is left with excess enrollment of 611 students. Recognizing that North Montco Votech enrollment is currently at 345, I think it is, and that students attend there only spend a half a day at the high school, 172 classroom spaces, or 7.36% of the total high school enrollment, is then freed up. In 2005, this reduces the 611 overage to 359, after which enrollment starts declining, as does the number of students in excess of capacity. It should be noted that the first year in which students exceed stated capacity is 1999, and then only by 15. In the year 2000, student excess is 102. So we still have time to review alternatives to absorbing this growth, selecting the best plan, and then executing it. I believe that the board should develop a program to more effectively utilize the existing facility, and it should use consultants to review class and space utilization. There's been enough comments directed in this area, but that's not all. I believe in and support the Penmont plan. It should be carefully studied and financial costs determined. I believe it provides us with the flexibility of resource utilization needed for these times. It has the potential of uniting this community instead of dividing it. An additional consideration of more limited use, but nevertheless with, I think, real benefits to improving education in this district, would be the utilization of the Leeds and Northrop Technical Center. This facility, with 112,000 square feet, costing $2.7 million, could serve as a tech prep center and a math science magnet school, stressing an area of learning that has seriously deteriorated in this country since 1960. In summary, if a genuine need for a new high school could be proven, then one should be built. However, the additional student population in the peak year of 2005 requires less than 20 additional classrooms. Building a large structure to last 40 years is a waste of taxpayers' monies, and that's all of us. We believe that a sound, fiscally responsible alternative means for addressing this matter are available and indeed have been presented to you. With the high school overcapacity estimated at 15 in 1999, there is additional time to examine alternatives carefully. The need to rush to judgment shouldn't exist unless the board has a low assessment of the school district's administrators and their ability to deal with a small overage, and I don't have that feeling. I believe that the Penmont program is the best that has been proposed and should be vigorously pursued because it will best serve the education of the students, be fiscally responsible, and begin the process of reuniting this community. Thank you.
That being the 11:45 is the end of the audience of citizens. Is there a move for adjournment? No, sir. He knew about it. He didn't come up soon enough. Is there a move for adjournment?
I won't do that.
No, sir. He was not in line. He didn't get up until Bill came up to the podium.
I only have 2 minutes to talk.
All right, sir. You get 2 minutes. Come on up. I don't care. The fact is, I announced it at 11:20. Some of us work tomorrow. Thank you very much.
Okay.
You got your 2 minutes. No one else. You got it? Okay. Your name, sir?
Charles Knipe, Montgomery Township, from the old people, not the new ones. You people realize what will happen if you build 2 different schools. It happened out in New Cumberland. They built a small school after they had the large school. The town, they cut each other's throat. You're better than me. You get more than I get. You get more than I get. You're going to have an awful problem, and you see now what you're having. You got these people coming wanting the school, these people not wanting the school. But if you build 2 different sizes, you're going to have worse. That's one thing to think. But one other thing I want to say is, he's talking about this Piedmont plan or whatever it is. Build a new elementary school, like he's saying. Take the junior high schools and put the 9th and 10th grades in. The senior high school use 11th and 12th. Then you can only build the one school.
Okay.
Take 2 grades up, 2 grades in here, 2 grades in the junior high.
Okay. Thank you. We're moving for adjournment. We're adjourned.